if you're the weekend warrior, you have to have setups for various conditions. If you find a really good setup in the middle of a bedding area with rubs, it's tore up, but it's very intrusive to get in there, if you're a weekend warrior, keep that in mind, but 9 times out of 10, you ain't gonna have the conditions to hunt that spot. So you need to be looking for spots where you can hunt if it's hot. You need to be looking for spots you can hunt on a cold front, spots you can hunt when it's dead calm out. Are there some spots real close to the road that you could get a morning hunt in where you're not gonna be super intrusive? Because what a lot of people will do is they'll force it. They'll be like, these are my only 2 days to go and this is the spot I gotta be. So they'll go in there when the conditions are bad or the timing ain't right and the deer ain't in there yet, and all they're doing is leaving their scent in that spot and they're blowing everything out because they don't have good conditions. That would be my advice, biggest piece of advice for the weekend warriors. Finding efficient ways to scout the properties that you're hunting and multiple setups for multiple conditions.
Aaron Warbritton, appreciate you letting us come up here and do this, man.
Welcome. Glad y'all made the trip up here to Redneck, Missouri.
Hey, I like this part of Missouri. I told you when we were driving up, it's pretty. We saw some deer coming up here, saw a couple strutters and some fields on the way up here. That's pretty cool. Man, I feel like it's been a long time coming. We've never had you on the podcast, and we're probably, I don't know if we're quite to episode 700 by the time this drops, but we're right there, around 700. So it took us 700 episodes, but we finally got you.
Well, I'm not exactly a southern outdoorsman, if you will. I'm up here in the middle part of Missouri, but a lot of our descendants in my family come from Kentucky from way back in the day. So I don't know if y'all count that or not, or where your line is.
That's a touchy subject for Andrew.
Listen,
That's a touchy subject.
we've had discussions about trying to draw where the actual South is. Yeah, I got roasted.
He doesn't call Tennessee the South.
Look,
He's an elitist when it comes to being a Southerner.
look. I mean, look. Oh yeah, there's that doe back in your backyard, Aaron. But anyways, where was I? Oh yeah. Now,
being
it's not, okay,
elitist.
there's like cultural South, and then there's like the deer hunting South. And when I say Southern deer hunting, I'm talking about pine goats, baby. Like deep South pine belt. I mean, Tennessee's got some good deer hunting.
Oh yeah.
So culturally, Tennessee is Southern, but their deer hunting is just a little better than it is in Alabama. I'm sorry. Like, get some comments. Jacob, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing excellent. Yeah. So today, Aaron, talk to you a little bit about how to become a better deer hunter. This is a topic that we have come up a bunch on the podcast, especially on YouTube. People that just want to get good at just killing deer. It's not so much about mature bucks. I'm sure that will be brought up at some point, but just getting consistent, especially as a bow hunter and maybe expanding opportunity. Now, we come from a state in Alabama where we have a very long gun season. It's about 3 months long. So it's a little bit different down there, but there's a lot of other states that if you want to hunt a lot, you need to be able to pick up a bow and be able to expand that opportunity. And to launch on this podcast, we have our Freezer Queen t-shirts. Now, listen. Everybody likes a good freezer queen. You want to kill a doe, stack the freezer, and that's a huge aspect of it. And that's going to be a lot of what we're going to talk about today. So not the sexiness of a giant buck, but again, just getting good, being consistent as a deer hunter. But to kick us off, Aaron, I want to know more about your upbringing. How did you get introduced into the outdoors and especially deer hunting?
My whole family hunted from way before I was born. So it was just what we did. Like, I don't even remember the first times I went to the woods because I was small. I mean, they would just take me out fishing, hunting. I know you guys have heard that, and that seems kind of cliche because you hear that from a lot of folks across the board. Not everybody, but my uncles were hardcore hunters, turkeys and deer primarily, but also small game. My dad and all my dad's buddies growing up were hunters, so I just went to the woods. I mean, they just toted me along. I've got some early memories when I was little, walking around in a little pair of blue jeans out there and like sneaking up on deer, that my dad would just take me out there and we would basically run into deer and spook them because I couldn't sit still, and he wanted me to have fun. So that's some of my earliest memories, deer hunting. But as I got older, we lived out in the country and we grew up around a bunch of public land. We just started traipsing around out there a bunch, and I can get in the weeds on that. You know, we hunted some private and some public, and the private eventually dried up, and we went more and more to public through time. But that's pretty much at a high level view. I was just brought up in it. That's what my uncles, my cousins, my dad, all his buddies did.
Now, what was your first introduction to hunting? Was it small game hunting, or did you go right into deer hunting with them?
Man, I don't know if I remember. I think the first time I went was on tracking jobs when somebody shot a deer. Dad come back to grandma's and grandpa's house and pick me and my cousins up and be like, "Hey, I shot a deer. You know, y'all want to go track it? Help me get out of the woods?" Like, yeah, heck yeah. We, drop our little toy tractors on the floor and we'd go out there and track deer. And I think that was probably the first thing. But I mean, it wasn't necessarily one thing. It was tracking deer and then eventually going along on an actual deer hunt, spooking deer, and then turkey hunting. I'd go out and I'd get to hear them gobble. This is way before I even packed a gun or a bow or anything. And then eventually, once I got a little bit older, I started shooting a 22 and a 410, and we'd go squirrel hunting. My uncle had a beagle, a really good rabbit dog, so I was always like picking up the phone and bugging him, like, "Hey, Uncle Ray, can we go rabbit hunting this weekend?" And he's like, "I guess I got 3,000 other things to do, but if you guys want to go, come on." So we go rabbit hunting with him all the time. That was some of the most fun I had when I was a kid, was rabbit hunting.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of everything, and then eventually got into duck hunting and goose hunting. I mean, we did it all when I was younger.
And then was turkey hunting very similar as well? I know we're not going to talk a ton about turkeys at all, but like, was it the same kind of thing? Like, again, you said you got started when you'd go hear birds, but you never really carried a gun. But that was one of those things that you kind of grew up with doing as well as turkey hunting.
Yes, but turkey hunting is different in that sense. So I was primarily brought up hunting by my dad. And my uncles, like I said, my uncles were really good rabbit hunters. My uncles were really good everything. Like, they were good deer hunters. They were good turkey hunters. My dad was an adequate deer hunter and a frequent member at deer camp, telling stories and cooking. He had not killed a turkey when we were turkey hunting when I was a kid. I remember going to the woods turkey hunting with him and him making these things sound like mythical ghosts, like, "I've hunted them for 15 years and I've seen one, I've never even got a chance at one." And I would go out there like, "Oh, wow, these things must be really difficult to kill." And he's like, "Oh man, John McMorris, one of his buddies, years ago we had a chance and I missed one in the fall. And he said, I've hunted them ever since and just never got a chance." He said, "They're really hard." So I grew up like that, thinking that these things were unicorns, basically. In the first few years that I went out with him, we didn't know what we were doing at all. Like, he's over there squawking on a mouth call, and I'm like, "Wow, that must be the ticket, But as I'm gonna land the plane here. But as I was getting older, I realized, like, I have to learn to do this because he doesn't know. So I slowly started to kind of figure it out as I got older, and eventually killed my first turkey. He took me to the woods, obviously. I called it in, but then I called in his first turkey for him, which was pretty special. I think I was 12 when I called in his first turkey, and he killed it. It was a Jake up at my grandpa's farm. But yeah, I mean, he was awesome dad as far as getting me into hunting, because it was almost the perfect storm, if you will, because he didn't know enough to teach me about the intricate details. He just wanted to go out and have a good time with his son. So we would just go out, and if I was bored, he was bored. We'd go to town, get donuts, and go do something else. We'd sit in a tree stand for 20 minutes, and he'd be like, "Well, there's not much moving, son. What do you say we get down and we go walk over here?" I'm like, "Okay, that sounds great." What's a 6-year-old want to do? He wants to sit in a tree stand and freeze for 3 hours, or you want to walk around and look at deer tracks and stuff? So that's what we ended up doing.
I wanted to bring this up because I've seen situations where dads took their kid, like especially their sons, hunting, and they were so serious about it, it almost burned the kid out.
Oh, yeah.
Because they take it too serious. Do you think that kind of casual, like a lot of deer can't go into the woods, but wasn't taking it overly serious might have helped you just have more fun at an early age So
Oh, yeah.
you enjoyed it in the social aspect of it, and then started focusing a little bit more when you got a little bit older of like, hey, I actually really want to try to focus and be good at this.
I think so, but I'm so serious about it now that I don't know if there's any way to keep me out of it. Like, I don't know if there was any wrong way you could have done it when I was a kid. I just knew I wanted to go. When Dad would leave to go on trout fishing trip somewhere with him and his buddies, I'd bawl and cry for hours because I didn't get to go. He's like, a few more years and you get to go to deer camp or you get to go to trout camp. Okay. I mean, 9, 10 years old, couldn't get there fast enough when I was a kid. So and then once he started calling and I started realizing that it wasn't working on turkeys, I was like, Dad, I'm going to call because I've been practicing every day for 3 months. He's like, with what call? I'm like, yours. I've been taking it out of the fridge and using it. He's like, son, that thing's been in there for years, let me get you some new ones. So yeah, eventually we got some new ones and I'd sit on the porch. My mom, I'd drive her crazy with turkey calls and owling and everything else. So it was just kind of in me, I think. And I just did it.
You have that gene.
Oh, I got one quick turkey story before you got to go on because we're on the subject of my dad. He killed that turkey. His first turkey is Jake, but he hadn't killed a longbeard. And for the next few years, it was just taking me and I was killing longbeards and stuff, and he'd take me to the woods and whatever, take me home. I think I was 15, didn't have my driver's license yet. We had a little piece of public land up the road from our house, and we went over there. There was a turkey gobbling, and he was down in the woods a little bit close to the road, and he had to be at work, so he had like 20 minutes to hunt. I mean, it was like pulling teeth with me and get him to go that morning. He's like, son, I just don't have time. I was like, we are going, Dad. It's beautiful out. They're gobbling. I've been riding my bike over there, and I've been listening to him for 2 weeks. We're going. So we went. This turkey's gobbling. I'd already killed one, so I was tagged out. So I'm trying to get him one. So he's back there grumbling the whole time, like, I got to get to work, Like, Dad, turkey's gobbling. I don't care about work, school, none of that matters. Turkey is gobbling on public. We got to go. So I went, and we got about halfway to him, and turkey started drifting the other way. And Dad goes, I got to go. He's like, I got to leave to go to work. I'm going to be late if we don't get out of here in 5 minutes. And I said, I'm going to the turkey. I don't care what you do. And I mouthed off to him, and I took off. And I went after that turkey, and I got down in there about 80 yards from him and sat down and started calling. And here he come down through the woods. Dang it, get up here. We got to go. We got to go. About that time, pow, he hammered right over the ridge, 80 yards, maybe closer, and he's coming. Because I'd already been calling to him, going at him. I was like, sit down, Dad. You're about to kill this thing. So he sat down. About 3 minutes later, that bird come up over the ridge, and he killed it. As soon as he shot it, I slapped him on the back and gave him a high five. I was like, way to go, Dad. That's your first longbeard. And he racked that shell out of there, and he said, go grab him. We're going to the truck. So, yeah, he was more worried about getting to work on time. I was more worried about killing the turkey. But that just shows you the dynamic I was working with when I was growing up.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I wanted to get into when you started maybe getting, say, high school. Like, I don't know if you had the opportunity to get your own vehicle in high school at all.
Yeah.
When you did you have an own vehicle or a vehicle you could drive back then?
Yeah, I did when I was 16.
Okay. Mm-hmm. What did that open up for you freedom wise to try to hunt a little bit more? And also, did you play sports that maybe kept you from hunting as much as you could have?
I quit sports that kept me from hunting as much as I could have. At that point, I got A's until I was a sophomore and got my driver's license, and A's quickly turned into C's because that was the priority. I got the driver's license. I was like, wow, I can go anytime, anywhere. I had a new lease on life at that point. And my parents had just split up about that time and moved to different houses. And they were dealing with a lot of stuff. And I was kind of an independent kid. At the age of 16, I sort of had, wow, I'm going to take care of myself for a little bit here while they're dealing with all this. But I have a driver's license and I've got tags. So that's what I did. And I got in some trouble at school multiple times when I was a junior and senior, for bringing turkeys in and dressing them in the ag building and all kinds of stuff. But anyway, we don't have to go down the rabbit hole, all that. But yes, when I got my driver's license, we were going every day, whatever it was.
Was it at that point when, because I always like to ask guys this that had that upbringing where they started hunting young and then they started hunting a little bit more, or a lot more by themselves at whatever age. Some people it's not until they're in college or whenever, but was there a hard learning curve or anything when you started going by your own, or because of how you hunted with your dad, it was a lot more kind of just like, I'm just kind of doing my own thing, and you were kind of building upon it by yourself now?
Yeah, the latter. I mean, I was just building upon it. I honestly, though, didn't hunt by myself very often. I would occasionally go, but most of the time, I mean, I was interested in filming hunts. Me and my cousin were, since we were like 10 or 11 years old. So everywhere we went, there was a video camera, well, an old crappy one, you know, and we would always try to go with one another. And if we couldn't go, then I would go with one of my buddies. I mean, it'd be into the second week of turkey season before I'd even carry a gun, because I'd be out, you know, a month before finding turkeys at these different properties. Then I'd start taking my buddies who didn't know how to run a camera, and I did. So I would film them shoot a handful of turkeys, and then eventually everybody would kill them or have to go to work or school or whatever, and I'd be like, okay, I'll go try to get one. And I'd go out by myself. So I bet I spent 90% of the time with other people when I was out there.
So you're telling me back in high school, you were getting your cousins and your friends in trouble by also missing school or doing things?
Oh, yeah, to a certain degree, but they'd go to school. You know, they'd try to kill a turkey or they wouldn't, and they'd go to school at 8 o'clock, and I'd be like, I'll see you in 3 hours. You know, I was like, Mr. Fisher, he's a turkey hunter. I got him first hour. He don't care. Like he did. But and I did get in some trouble. But there was one time my principal in my senior year, he called me up there to the office, and I would never mouthed off. I always got my homework done, did all that. But I just wouldn't show up sometimes during turkey season, especially. Sometimes during deer season and duck season also. But I was about to graduate like 2 weeks out, and he called me up to his office, and he said, sit down. I know where you've been. I know you ain't been here. And if you don't get your butt in these seats, you're going to be coming back next year. And I was like, yes, sir. I'll be here the last 2 weeks. He's like, okay. Just wanted to get that clarified. And I didn't lie to him or anything. I mean, there was no lying about it. I walk in the door with camouflage and a turkey call in my pocket. So they knew where I was at and what I was doing. Now, if you got any kids listening, don't follow me and go to school, you know, pay attention. But
it shows that you're eat up with it. And that kind of goes into hunting more by yourself and just kind of expanding out. So at what point, well, it's really probably not a point, because it sounds like you took it very seriously at all ages. I mean, you called your dad's first turkey up at 12 years old. But when did you start putting maybe more of an emphasis on deer hunting, or just trying to get consistent at deer hunting?
Oh, it's the same time. Everything is happening at the same time. I was using turkey hunting examples, but we were hardcore into deer hunting, especially my cousins. And they had some real good private properties to hunt when I was growing up, so I was always trying to go with them anytime I could. We had some decent stuff to hunt, like my grandpa's farm, and then we had some public land up the road that had some deer on it. I didn't start getting proficient at hunting and killing them with a bow, though, until I got my driver's license. I had killed a few of them before that. I think my first buck with a bow was when I was 13, and I had bow hunted for several years and missed them. And that was the same thing with turkey hunting. I turkey hunted for, a couple years with my dad before I could carry a gun. And in the first year or two that I carried a gun, we didn't kill anything. So there was lots of tagless hunts, if you will, where we didn't harvest an animal,
Because you were so eat up with it, do you feel like when you started to figure it out, was it just from you beating your head against the wall and just figuring it out, or did you have any mentors who were really good deer hunters that showed you the way?
My uncles were real good at it. I mean, at that point in time, my Uncle David was starting to really kill some big bucks with his bow about every year. And eventually he had to switch to a crossbow because he was disabled from working all those years in a factory. And he went to a crossbow and he killed I don't even know how much it scored. It's a giant 8-pointer. I'll show you a picture of it later, but it's like 170-inch 8-pointer with a crossbow. And at that point, though, he had killed a big buck every year for several years. And his brother, Bob Grotman, also was killing big ones every year. And not just that, but deer in general. My Uncle Ray was the same way. And my dad bow hunted, and he would do it, and he would... I just have funny stories with him of stuff getting away, mainly. He would get them every once in a while, but primarily it was my dad's buddies who were hardcore deer hunters, the McMorris family, and then my Uncle David, the Grotmans, and then my Uncle Ray Willingham. And then eventually my older cousins, my Uncle David's sons, Corey and Brandon, they were a few years older than me, and they were hardcore into hunting. So I was going with them every chance I got and learning from them when I was that young age. That's where a lot of it come from.
And that was early 2000s?
That was even before that, because I was itching to go with them when I was 10, 11 years old, which would have been 98, 99. They had a tree stand on their property that they hunted over there that they farmed that we called Old Faithful. It was a 12-foot ladder stand. And that thing, you would always see deer in it, and occasionally you'd get them coming by at 15, 20 yards. So whenever the wind was out of the northwest or the west, I was like, you guys going hunting tonight? Where y'all going to sit? You know, I was always like,
Old Faithful.
Can I invite myself to go along with you? You know, and they would eventually, you know, let me tag along. And that's where I killed my first deer with a bow, was out of that Old Faithful stand. That's where my cousin Brandon killed his first deer with a bow as well. Mm-hmm. So that was mainly my Uncle David's doing, you know, putting that stand up there.
Mm-hmm. If you want to get a head start on deer season, you can go out and you can actually scout feed trees in summer. This is something we've been talking about on the podcast quite a bit lately. Today I'm out here, I've got a pair of Vortex Viper HDs. This is a great pair of binoculars for this. And what we're doing is we're just looking up into these oak trees, looking to see if we can see the little acorn buds on the limbs. So as summer goes on, it's going to get easier and easier to see those buds as they get larger. A tip for that is when you're looking up in the tree, you want to find a limb that's daylighted. It's just nothing but daylight behind it. You're looking at an isolated limb, and you're just going to want to pick that thing apart with a good pair of binos like these that are clear. I like to use a trekking pole and actually brace the binos on the trekking pole and sit down underneath that tree and really look at it for a while. So if you want to get a head start scouting feed trees this summer, go get you a pair of Vortex binoculars. Head on over to eurooptic.com. Use the code Southern10 and it's going to get you a discount on these binoculars or any other optics that Vortex sells. If you're enjoying this show, there's one place you need to be this August, and that is the Mobile Hunters Expo in Dalton, Georgia. We get a lot of questions about how do you find new hunting buddies, how do you find like-minded people who like to hunt the way that you do, who you can bounce ideas off of, go on trips with, whatever the case may be. The Mobile Hunters Expo is the place to do that. If you're wanting to go get connected with the community and meet like-minded individuals, the Mobile Hunters Expo is it. So not only are you going to get the chance to network around and meet other people in this space, but also all the mobile hunting gear is going to be there. If you've ever wanted to try any saddles, lock-ons, sticks, or any other kind of niche mobile hunting gear, this is the place to do it. You know, a lot of those companies are direct to consumer, so you can't just go to a store like a Bass Pro or anything like that and try these products out. This is going to be the place you can do it. So mark your calendars, August 8th through the 10th, Dalton, Georgia. We'll see you there. So it might be the off season, but we're still always thinking about whitetails. And if you're looking to get more mobile this fall and you're looking at saddle setups, the two most common designs you're going to see are a single panel design or a double panel design. They both have their advantages and disadvantages. A single panel design is going to be more comfortable right out of the box, while a double panel design is going to be much more adjustable and customizable to your fit. We always say on the podcast, saddles are kind of like boots. Different people are going to like different things. As a general rule of thumb, I found that heavier set guys typically like a single panel more than they like a double panel. But other than that, it's just really a matter of preference. I personally use both of these saddles. This is the Method 2 from Latitude, and this is the Lone Star from Latitude. I will say that the Method 2 is really nice because it's a two-panel design. It's almost like you have a built-in back band that'll take a little bit of pressure off your back when you're sitting down. But if you're just getting into saddle hunting and you want something that's extremely comfortable right out of the box, the Lone Star is going to be your go-to. It has an advanced hip pinch reduction system in it, so right out of the box, this is going to be very comfortable, and you're not going to have the hip pinch issues that a lot of people have when they first get into saddle hunting. So if you want to be more mobile this fall, check out latitudeoutdoors.com to see these two saddles and a bunch of other mobile hunting gear. We've enjoyed them a lot, and I think you're going to enjoy them too.
All right, guys, we got another in the field tip for you today. One thing we're doing right now while we're out here scouting is looking at overlooked spots and overlooked by us. One thing we always do while we're in the field is using our tracker on onX Hunt to be able to not only see where we've gone, but where we haven't been, and that's what we're going to go look at. So today, we're actually going to work up into a drainage that we haven't been to before. We've walked all around it, but we haven't been up in it. And again, it's a very important factor of using the tracker so you can see where you have been and where you haven't. A lot of times those places you haven't been is your overlooked spots. So if you want to try Onyx Hunt, you can download Onyx Hunt today and use the code SOUTHERN and save 20% on your membership.
What were some of those early fundamentals that you learned from those guys?
Oh, just your basic woodsmanship stuff. Be quiet, pay attention to the wind. He was very adamant about us being able to shoot a pie plate at 15, 20 yards. And we could not go until we shot that. He didn't really care about our setups or anything like that, but they're a farming family, so they had hay bales out there all the time. Me and my cousin Brandon on summer vacations would just watch Monster Bucks tapes on repeat inside, and we'd go out and play cowboys and Indians in the yard, and we'd shoot bows. And we'd put up a tree stand 4 feet up in a tree in the yard, and we'd shoot, and then at night we'd go down the road and we'd film velvet bucks with my aunt's old home video camera. You know, that's what we did all summer. We'd sit inside, eat salsa, and watch Monster Bucks tapes, pretty much. I mean, we knew the Realtree Monster Bucks videos were a big influence, but we also watched Night and Hail. I mean, anything that Walmart had, we got it. And we were just going through that over and over and over again. So, yeah, I mean, he was adamant about practicing and shooting a pie plate. That was his thing. And if you couldn't hit it every time, you didn't need to be going, and you didn't need to be taking long shots. You needed to wait for the right opportunities, you know. And he would take us hunting, and he was a little more strict than my dad, which was good because I was learning more of those detailed things, like sitting still, setting up properly, you know, watching the wind, all the just your basic fundamentals, because that's all I was learning at that time. Eventually, I missed so many deer with a bow when I was a kid. I mean, going with Dad, I missed so many of them. Taking terrible shots. I had multiple occasions where bucks came in so close, and I was literally so nervous that I could not draw my bow. I mean, there was one time where 3 bucks came in 5 yards. My dad used to build me these little 6-8 foot ladder stands out of 2x4s because he didn't want me too high in the tree in case I fell. Back then, the safety equipment wasn't state of the art, if you will. So I was sitting in one of them little 8 foot ladder stands, and these 3 bucks come right by me. And I remember I had an old quiver that ran down the side of my leg attached to my pants, my belt. I had my bow laying there. I didn't have an arrow on or nothing because I didn't know no better. Those bucks walked right by me, and I was so nervous to even move to grab an arrow. I just watched them walk by me, and I was about to faint up there. I was just heart pounding, you know. So there was lots of instances like that where I screwed it up before I finally killed one with a bow out of that old faithful stand. But that stand was set up perfectly for a 20-yard broadside shot. And all summer long, I practiced at a bag target and at them hay bales at plates, you know, until I got proficient with it. And it took a bunch of mistakes before that happened. And then after that one happened, I mean, I smoked him. I stopped him. Perfect, 20 yards, shot him, smoked him. I ran across the farm to my cousin, ruined his hunt because I was so fired up. He come down, he's like, "What are you doing? It's prime time, you know?" And I'm like, "I just killed a buck. I made a perfect shot. I know I did." He's like, "You find him?" It's like, "No, I ain't even looked for him." But after that happened, that was a big deal. It was a little hat rack buck. I'd killed a bigger one than that with a rifle the year before that, but that was a turning point. I think I was 13.
Man.
Talking about your uncle telling you you got to shoot a pie plate to be proficient brought back so many memories of my uncles. Same thing. It's like you got to be able to hit a pie plate.
Yep.
Then just shooting pie plates. And it's like now, it's like if you said that now, they're like, pie plates? Like, what are you talking about? You got to be shooting tight groups. But it's like back then, it's, you know, I didn't know anybody growing up. Like even my uncles, like they were good with a bow, but compared to like now technology and how good guys' groups are, it was like you were trying to hit an 8-inch pie plate or 6-inch pipe, like smaller pie plate. If you want to make a challenge, again, you went to a smaller plate or a smaller paper plate you'd put up there on a hay bale. So that's.
And this was at the beginning of carbon arrows. Even before that, you know, you got old aluminum arrows with feathers on them. You got to take care of the feathers, and you're shooting slow bows, compounds, definitely compared to what we have today. So everything was close range and consistency, and practice out of the tree. Do all those things.
Do you remember when you got your first rangefinder?
I was probably 15 or 16. Yeah. It was an old Bushnell. I think I still have it. but I hardly ever used it, really. I mean, I was fascinated with it at first, and you thought that you had to have these things, but really didn't end up using it to actually harvest many deer with a bow.
Yeah. Well, that's one of those things about getting one in close. But I think back when I started bow hunting in high school, like freshman year, and I didn't have a rangefinder or anything like that, and just judging distance on the ground versus shooting elevated and so on, and just misjudging distances and, lobbing over a deer's back, lobbing it, hit the ground 4 feet in front of the deer because he was further than I thought he was or whatever.
Yeah.
And again, there's kind of like learning curves. And of course, there's a lot of things that kind of help you get past that. But that kind of upbringing and like the passion watching monster buck videos and all that kind of stuff, kind of fueling the fire. What was and there might not be a specific moment, but what really brought about you starting to become more consistent as a bow hunter, maybe at an early age, whether, late teens, early 20s, whenever that was, where you felt confident, going in the woods with a bow, the woodsmanship setup or the woodsmanship knowledge along with the setups to make you feel like you had the confidence to be able to kill a deer consistently?
The setups are everything. That's not everything. There's other factors too, but I think the setup itself is the most important thing when it comes to making good quality, ethical shots on deer and consistently killing them over and over and over again. You hear all this talk about, you got to be accurate, and with all the I would say your expert bow people out there. Me personally, that doesn't fit my personality and my style of hunting. It's all about the setup and being able to execute shots you can make, which is close range opportunities. When you're bow hunting, you're talking about a matter of inches or yards most of the time. That goes with what you're saying about woodsmanship and reading wind and looking at the direction a trail is versus where your setup is at. But over the years, it's just been a very steady, slow progression of getting better at making those setups, finding those ambush points, whether you're setting up on the ground or you're 30 feet in a tree or you're in a ladder stand or you're hanging from a saddle or whatever. And when it really started to go into overdrive was when I started talking to Joe Elzinger, which was back in the Midwest whitetail days. And I was successful up to that point, hunting a certain few types of ways. But Joe was all about, and I met him through the Hunting Beast website. We were talking about infalt a while ago. Learned a lot from Dan too over the years, but Joe always talked about situational hunting tactics. And that's what really tripped the trigger in my brain was he was like, man, everybody wants these sort of blanket tips or these blanket statements to help them kill deer with a bow, but every single situation is so dynamic and different that you need to start really thinking about the intricate details of every setup and why this worked and why this doesn't work. And that will eventually help you, in the future. Because it really is. Deer hunting is incredibly situational. People want to know, like, is Missouri better than Kansas, or is probably a bad example. Is Missouri better than Kentucky, or is Alabama better than Georgia? It's like, I don't see it that way. I look at a specific piece of property and a specific setup on that piece of property and see if that is a good spot to kill a buck or not, or a deer. Period. Mm-hmm. I mean, you could have an insane great hunting area that's got all kinds of big bucks on it. If you're in a poor setup with a bow and arrow, you are gonna struggle. You're gonna hit deer and lose them. You're gonna spook deer. You're gonna educate them. I think that's like the thing that I'm always focused on anymore, trying to get better at. And I was always focused on that growing up as well, because that's what killed that deer was my Uncle David's old faithful deer stand setup. There was a reason it was there in that corner. And it was because that's where all those trails across this CRP field funneled into the corner of this Milo. And that he knew that because he'd hunted it for years and years and years. I mean, you guys know, if you hunt a specific property for a long time, you're going to start to find the killing spots on that property just by being out there and seeing it. But what I'm trying to do is look at a property for the first time or the second time and figure all that out beforehand. And that's what Joe was always talking about. It's like, learn to read the situation that's there and set up according to that. I can give you gobs of examples of that happening, but that brings me back to the Old Faithful thing. That deer died because of that setup. And he told me exactly what was going to happen. He's like, you're going to sit in that tree, the wind's going to come from the CRP field, and right before dark, they're going to come filtering out of that CRP. And he's like, you might see them up here, you might see them down there, but they're probably going to come by you right here. And when they get to 30 or 40 yards, they're going to walk behind a big oak tree. It's like, that's when you draw your bow. Then they're going to walk right in front of the stand. You hold until they get their broadside at 20 yards, and then you grunt to stop them, or you shoot them when they stop. And just read the script right down to it. And we see that happen a lot of times. Joe used to say, you hunt 30 times a year, say, with a bow. You're guessing every time. Because they're not gobbling, they're not bugling, you don't know exactly where they're at. You're guessing every time what's going to happen. And you're anticipating and preparing in your mind for that opportunity to happen. It's like, all you got to do is be right once. So that really sunk in. It's like, okay, every time you go, you got to believe that it's going to happen and the deer's going to do this in your mind. And you've got to prepare for it to happen. Practice drawing and all that. You've heard people doing that, and you guys do it too. But it's really executing the entire scenario in your brain before the deer gets there and then executing it. And if it don't happen, 9 times out of 10, it don't happen. But then all of a sudden, Buck reads the script and you get an 8-yard shot at him. I'd rather get one of those chances a year than 5 of them at 40.
Well, that's one thing, especially if people follow a lot of your videos, a lot of y'all's videos, is you always talk about like inside 30, like, 30, 35 and in. There's a lot that can happen between 30 and 40 yards. And when you get them inside that close, there's a lot can happen. Wind can swirl, it can mesh up no matter how far the deer is, how close the deer is. But you have a lot more. It's a lot bigger target, it seems, when it's a lot closer than if it's out another 10, 15, 20 yards. Setup is something that doesn't get talked about enough. I think a lot of people, if I ask that question too, they instantly go to, specking out a bow or arrow setups or whatever. But the setup is huge, goes back to the woodsmanship aspect of it. And that is something I think that even myself bites me in the butt sometimes, especially when we hunt so much with a gun and we swap back to a bow and I still have that gun mentality.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, I see him, but dude, he's at 75 yards. I'm not doing anything. I'm not on the X. So when it comes to learning of how to be on the X and asking that question, why? Why did it work? Why did it not work? Why did he walk on this other side of the tree when I thought he was going to be on this side? And so on. How have you been able to work through the why in the situation of, based off how everything reads and what you're finding, what is the right setup for you, whether it's elevated, on the ground, or whatever? How do you work through that in your head?
Well, every situation is different. So when you get out there, you have to read the conditions of the day. That's sort of my first thing that I'm looking at. It's like, okay, is it wet outside today? Are the leaves wet? Has it recently rained? Is it windy out? Is it not windy out? Is it hot? Is it cold? Is it a cold front coming through? All those things play a factor, and I'll give you some examples. Why? For example, if it's hot out, it's early season. A lot of people are like, oh, conditions are crap, I'm not going to the woods. That gives you an advantage if you're hunting public land because ain't nobody else going to be out there. Deer's still there. They're using the area differently. Say, for example, it's 15 degrees above average and it's early season. Those deer are going to bed differently in a lot of situations than they do when it's average temperatures or below. They're going to find shady spots. It may be a north-facing ridge with some cliffs out above it where they can get up underneath of some of those boulders. And if you actually go to those spots and climb up in those beds, you can feel it's 10 degrees cooler right there. There's a reason why he's there. Or they will go in bed at the bottom of a dry creek bed. Mm-hmm. I've seen them do that a ton of times in late summer and early fall. If it's really hot and humid out and you've got a dry creek bed, get down in the sand of that creek bed and you don't have to lay all the way down there, but sit down in there and feel how much cooler that is than the cedar ridge above there, where there's more sunlight getting to the ground and it's holding that humidity in there. That's just one example of what I'm thinking about. And what I'm thinking about, are the woods wet? So if it's wet, I can get away with more movement because I'm not making noise getting to and from my spots. So if I have a spot, for example, that's more sensitive to get in and out of, and I want to hunt the middle of a bedding area, I'll wait for a wet, windy day. because everything's moving in the woods. It's windy. If I can get in there in the dark when they're less apt to seeing me from a distance, everything's moving, I've walked right up on them. I mean, from me to that light in the dark, shining my headlamp right on them, because they're in the trail that I'm walking to get to the tree. And they don't even see you because they don't hear you, number one, because the leaves are wet. They don't see you because everything else is moving. On the flip side, if it's calm and crunchy and there's no wind whatsoever, and you're taking a step and you can hear those leaves crunching for hundreds of yards around, you're alerting everything in that area. So you have to go about it differently. You have to sound more like a squirrel or a deer as you're walking, not like a person. Where if it's wet and windy, you might be able to really pick up the pace and get right in the middle of it.
Now, also, how does that play a factor for when we're talking about setups? Because I do want to kind of keep on touch on this because I think this would be very, very helpful for people that are just trying to get more consistent, especially bow hunting.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many aspects of this. How do you look at setups on a place that you have history with that isn't like the first time you're going in there, you've hunted, whether, think back maybe earlier on, whether you had a little permission property, a little private land, or you're just kind of hunting a public land piece for the first time that year, and you've hunted a few times. How do you constantly go from learning from one situation, like maybe slightly more observation, like I'm just trying to get eyes on animals,
Yep.
to picking the spot as a bow hunter to put yourself in the right spot? I know it's situational based, but how do you work through that, and how did you work through that earlier on?
Well, that's a good way to think about it, because if you go into an area and you haven't hunted it before and the trails aren't real obvious, the past sign isn't super obvious, maybe you don't have a lot of confidence in walking into this big tract of big woods where deer are scattered all over and they can seemingly meander anywhere. Then the first time in, I might want to sit somewhere where I can observe deer movement. If there's a leeward side of a ridge, how a wind's blowing over the top of it and it's during the rut, I may not be as aggressive as my first hunt in there. I may watch from a distance and see how and when these bucks hook around this down tree or the leeward side of this bluff, or, whatever it is. There may not be a legitimate trail there that I can just zero in on. So if I watch that 2 or 3 times, then I know that I need to move over there. But see, there comes the next wrinkle. Once you move over there and you change your position, you change how the wind is going to impact you at your setup. So the next step is setting up on the X and seeing how the wind performs, seeing how the deer react to you being in there. So if they come through there, are they going to pick you off? Are they going to visually see you, or are they going to smell you? Does the wind swirl more 10 feet up in that tree? Does it swirl more at 20 feet? Does it swirl less at ground level? You're thinking about all those things once you move in from the observation to the X. And then once you get on the X, every time a buck comes through there, I'm looking at how he's reacting to my presence there, whether it's the ground scent coming in, all those things I just mentioned. And over time, after you've hunted it 5, 6, 10, 15 times, and you've observed how young bucks move, does move, mature bucks move through that spot, then you really start to narrow things down to a spot and how you can kill them. Most of the time, there's a weakness in there. A lot of the time, there's not very many of them. The deer have the advantage, especially a mature buck, especially when you're hunting with a bow. So it takes these little moves. I mean, the buck I killed last year with me and Nick, that was a spot that I had a lot of history with, and I'd observed bucks moving through there multiple times, and we've just been kind of refining the setup a little bit more each time, changing trees, finding more cover. This year, there'd been a tornado that went through there, and it'd blown a couple trees down. Well, that moved the trails 20 yards. So I had to scrap my initial tree once I got in there. I was like, this is the tree I'm going for, but there's a huge oak tree here that has got to move these trails. I can see the root ball out there 30 yards in front of me, and the tree's laying at the base of the stand tree that I'm going to climb up in. And those trails before were coming right 8 yards in front of it. There's no way they're coming through this mess. They're going to be going around that root ball. So we moved up to where we could shoot the upper side of that root ball. And I ended up drawing back on that buck when he walked behind the root ball and into the opening. Mm-hmm. So that was just an example of adapting to that situation. All the prior knowledge helped kill that deer, But if I'd have sat in the other tree, I would have been taking a 40-yard shot instead of, a super close range shot. Ended up grunting him in right at the base of the tree. I mean, I had to draw back and let down on the thing like 3 times because I couldn't get him to stop. He walked through every one of my openings at 22, 18, 17, and then eventually killed him at 8. But I like to be right on them. I don't like to mess around with 25 yards or more. That's when you start losing deer, in my opinion. And I don't care who you are. You could be the best archer in the world. You put a big buck out there at 30 yards, and you cannot tell me how much he's going to move. Is he going to move a half inch? Is he going to move 3 inches when you shoot? Is he going to wheel away from you? Is he going to drop his shoulder towards you? What's going to happen? You could be the best shot in the world. You can't predict it. But when they get to 10, 12 yards, that arrow's getting there so fast, they don't have time to react.
That's why I think some of our most popular guests in the past are guys that are traditional archers, traditional bow hunters, because they're trying to get them inside 20 yards, preferably inside 15. And if you can do that consistently and then you swap out the traditional archery equipment for a compound, hyper effective.
Yep.
I mean, you have a lot more, I don't say room for error, but you get a deer that close, you can really work with it.
You do have more room for error. I mean, we've made bad shots at 15, 16 yards and still killed the animal. Mm-hmm. I've made bad shots at 30 yards and either completely missed them or wounded them. Mm-hmm. And that's really sticks with you. Mm-hmm. That sticks with you more than killing them. I mean, I hate that. I know y'all do too. It's just, I've lost a few of them at that distance that I felt like, and back in the Midwest Whitetail days, we had the luxury of looking at all this slow motion footage from hundreds of archery kills and misses and, hit and loss. And over again, I was seeing guys make perfect shots at 30 yards and lose the deer because they could not predict how much the deer was going to move. They might have an idea, but you're shooting at a moving, unpredictable target. And as you bring that in, that our average, we calculated it up a year or two ago, all the archery killed deer that we had as a group. I don't know how many it was. I don't really care. But the average shot distance was 16 yards. Mm-hmm. Very few over 30. And in certain situations, yes. And I can see where if a guy's hunting private land in a box blind over a food plot, you're going to need to practice more at 30, 40, 50 yards because that may be your opportunity at a feeding deer. But where I'm hunting at on public in a variety of different states, it is a close range game.
Yeah, Aaron, one of the reasons that I've wanted to get you on specifically, we were actually having the discussion about who could we talk to about this subject, like just getting good at deer hunting, like general deer hunting. And, the big bucks will come with that. And a lot of the big buck interviews that we have, people who are just really good on mature bucks, most of them will say, you got to get good at just deer hunting first. And one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, we were brainstorming, we're like, Aaron would be perfect and we're going to be up there. So let's see if he wants to do it. But one of the reasons I wanted to have you on about this is because you've had the unique opportunity where you travel and hunt so much and you're constantly putting yourself in new situations and new areas that you haven't been to, and you'll have to figure it out in like a week. You've probably done that more than most people do in their life, probably. And so I'm wondering about your perspective on that. Like the setup is one thing, and we can go back to that, but I just wanted to put this in here real quick. What about just finding the deer? I mean, because you might be hunting in Iowa or Missouri, and then you've got a hammer on the wall back here from Georgia. So how do you reconcile that? Like just going to such different habitat types, different states, hours away from the house, and y'all can find them quick.
I mean, it's gonna sound pretty simple, but it's just boot leather and deer sign a lot of times, or deer or spotting deer. Where we were at in Georgia, I can't give blanket statements. That's just not how my brain works. I always go to a situation, and then I can explain it. Reverse engineer that. And we were in Georgia, where that buck come from, very thick area, very difficult to glass. So we have to rely on finding deer sign. That requires boot leather. You have to get out and move around the woods. I'd never hunted there before. I don't know what half the plants are. It's all thick. Deer look like they can bed virtually everywhere. Where are we going to kill these things at? So what we had to do is we had to start looking for sign, and eventually we had to start spooking deer on purpose to see where they were at. It's like see how that deer was bedded where it was, or what that thicket looked like, what these acorns are that just fell. And there's obviously deer sign in those. Can we repeat that pattern elsewhere on this property? You know, and over the course of a week, you're just putting all those little nuggets in your brain. And then you're just trying to repeat that, you know, as many times as you can, coupled with the fact you want to find areas where people aren't going. But I mean, it honestly all kind of meshes together. Mm-hmm. Usually when you find the deer, you're finding areas where people aren't going, unless it's all night sign that you're seeing, which you have to sort of reconcile that out at some point as well. But it is very basic. It is just effort more than anything. And looking at what that situation offers you. If you go to South Dakota, for example, you're going to be on glass because you can be more efficient with that. In a lot of areas, I'm honestly in the truck and I'm just driving around and I'm looking at, you know, is the road ditch soft dirt that's leaving tracks where I can read them? And okay, here's deer tracks. Here's a bunch of deer tracks. There must be some deer in here in this spot. Let's go in here and identify what the spot looks like, how they're bedding in it, how they're moving around in it, and then see if we can repeat that pattern in 3 or 4 other places. In Georgia, we noticed they were hammering red oak acorns at a certain elevation. And that moved up and down the mountains a little bit, but it was pretty obvious once you come down below this midway bench and you got on the one right below it, there was more red oaks there and a lot of these drainages, and they were dropping, and all of a sudden we get into fresh deer sign, fresh poop, you know, leaves stirred up, fresh tracks, occasional fresh rub here and there. But that's what we were targeting. And we don't just find one spot like that. We're looking for multiple spots. And that comes before the setup. Because like you said, you could have a great setup. If no deer's going to walk by you, what good does it do you? So you have to find them first. And that's what I'm all about, is efficiency. How can we find them as quickly as possible? I mean, in Michigan, me and Ted, we were hunting most of the time within a half mile of the road based on efficiency. Like most people are like, oh, you got to get 2 miles back. You got to get the canoe out. You got to, you know, get up at 1 a.m. and sail it back in there behind everybody else. It's like, that's one option for me. I want 6 so that I can go to plan B, C, D, E, and so on. So what me and Ted did is we leapfrog speed scouted. Went down a road, dropped Ted off, take a line in there half mile, spend 30 minutes, come out. If you see something noteworthy, come out and get me, we'll go back in. And we want to figure it out right then and there so that we don't have to go in and get more intel later. He'd go do that. I'd go half mile up the road. I'd go in 30 minutes, back to the car, regroup, compare notes, boom, down the road again. And we'd do that 10, 15 times over the course of the day, missing hunts just to find deer. And it worked great in that scenario because it was thick country that was not glassable. It was flat, very consistent wind across the board. So pretty much anything we found, we could hunt it. Because the wind flow was pretty consistent through that country. You get up in those mountains and the wind flow is another beast entirely. So.
Yeah, that's fun too, man, doing that with a buddy like you're talking about. And me and Jacob travel to hunt a little bit, not nearly the extent that you guys do. But one thing that we found out, I just wanted to bring this up because you kind of mentioned it, but I'm curious on your thoughts on it, is you always get the advice that you were just saying, like take the canoe in, walk 2 miles, do this, do that, wade across the creek. I mean, a lot of times you'll get back there and you'll find a trail camera in a tree stand way back. So it's kind of, you don't always have to go deep. I mean, it's situational, like what you're talking about. I mean,
how much time do you have? Mm-hmm. You got a 4-day hunt. How many hours are in the day? How much time do you have to sleep? How much time do you have to be in the woods? Get that down to a number and think about, okay, if I pick this spot on the map, it looks like it's 3 miles back there as the crow flies, but it's actually 4.5 by the time I walk around this ridge and do this and cross this river. How long is it going to take you to get in there? 2.5 hours? 2 hours? What about if it's in the dark and you're going there to hunt and you're not trying to spook deer on the way? 3 hours? Before you know it, you've spent all day going into this remote area that you've had your heart set on, and then you find a camera in there. Well, you just burned 1 day out of 4. That ain't efficient. I'm trying to be efficient. I'm enjoying my time out there. I love to hunt, but anymore, I got a wife and kids at home that I must spend time with. That's priority number 1. Hunting is number 2. So I want to go, have fun, be successful, and come home. I don't have, 10 years ago, I could have just left for a month and a half, and it take as long as it takes. But that's not how I operate anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the guy that you were just describing of like taking 4 hours to get to a spot, you got your heart set, you just described me. That's me. I do that every time. It drives him crazy.
I've certainly done it too, and it's worked. But it's like, it's a big swing to do that. It's a big risk on a short time frame.
Well, especially because this kind of transitions the conversation to something that I'm actually even more excited about, because there's a lot of people that fall in this category, is the weekend warrior who might have a day and a half, a week to hunt if they're lucky. And efficiency is massive because, if you start calculating, depending on how long your seasons are and not counting other events and things you might have to do on the weekend, birthday parties, whatever, especially you got kids, of how many opportunities you might get to hunt a season, you start really limiting that number down, and then you have to try to be as efficient as possible, especially if you're trying to provide food, you're trying to kill a nice buck, you're just trying to have fun and everything. Like, you have to become efficient in that circumstance. And that's a lot of what we're talking about now, as well as, you could have some of those spots that, even if it's your home ground, especially if we're talking public land here in this circumstance, you can go super far in and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work. If it doesn't work, you're trying to scrap to a new area. For the weekend warrior kind of individual who's trying to become more efficient, especially if you're talking bow hunting, is it even more critical for them to have as many spots as possible to be able to spot check? Like, what is your advice and thought process for someone who has that 1 to 1.5 days a week to be able to go and hunt outside of spending time with family? What would be the thought process there about trying to break down an area and learn it to try to become efficient in that on that property?
First thing is to be self-aware of what your situation is, and don't just watch internet shows and think, oh, I'm going to do what this guy did. Like, this guy, whoever you're watching, is going to be in a different situation more than likely than you are. So be self-aware and organize your time so you figured out to what you have available. Weekend warrior, I kind of break this into, let me back up. I break this into kind of 3 different categories, right? So you got the guy that works 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. Weekend warrior can go Saturday and Sunday. Maybe he can sneak out after work a day or two during the week. Then you got the flexible worker who works 3 12s or something like that. Or he can call his boss when a cold front is on the way and he can take off work. So he gets the same amount of time per week as the weekend warrior, but the weekend warrior's got to go Saturday, Sunday. The flexible worker can go Monday, Wednesday. He can go Thursday, Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever, based off of what the conditions are. That's completely different scenarios that you're dealing with, because the flexible worker can use weather to his advantage, and hunt the best weather days or the best conditions for his spots. The weekend warrior must go when he can go to do it. Or the third one is the week vacationer. So he's got to work all year, but he saves up his time so he can go for 10 days in a row. All 3 of those things look way, way different. And I mean, we could just stick with the weekend warrior. You have your days. So what I'd be trying to do is go out and learn a little bit each time. Don't try to overcomplicate this thing. Everybody wants success right now. Just learn a little bit each time. If you got an hour after work to buzz by a spot and just see if there's anybody hunting it, check where the pressure is, maybe slip in there, look for some sign without being too intrusive. I'm always looking in that situation. I'm always looking at areas and deer sign that I can check regularly, whether that's with a trail camera or just with my eyes. Because you'll notice on a lot of these public areas, there'll be deer sign in areas where there's people. Well, that's night sign. But if you can go in there and say you're on an access path and you're a half mile in and there's a line of scrapes opened up along the edge of it. Well, I'm going to look at them scrapes and I'm going to keep that in mind all the time. In postseason, wintertime, I want to go backtrack off those scrapes and find killing setups in that spot. I don't want to do that during the season. So weekend warrior, take your weekends in February and March and go out there and spend time refining your setups. Pick trees. Think about how you're going to get in and out of there at 3 o'clock in the morning. Think about the right conditions to access those areas. And then come fall, go to your scouting spots when you have an hour after work. Buzz in there, check them scrapes. It's like, they're not opened up. It's October 1st. They're not opened up. There's not many acorns falling, not a lot of deer sign. Okay, be back in 2 weeks. 2 weeks later, Friday after work, buzz in there. Oop, fresh scrape right here, fresh rub right there. There's 2 trails leading down in there. I've got a good tree down there that I picked last March for a south wind. Sunday afternoon, we got a south wind. Boom, you've got a setup in mind that you can go hunt that weekend. And you didn't just put a bunch of pressure on the deer. So the scouting aspect of it is very important. You need to find ways you can efficiently scout if you have limited time like that. And if you're the weekend warrior, you have to have setups for various conditions. So if you find a bad setup in the middle of, I was going to say bad A, but I don't want to cuss. If you find a really good setup in the middle of a bedding area with rubs, it's tore up, but it's very intrusive to get in there. If you're a weekend warrior, keep that in mind, but know that, 9 times out of 10, you ain't going to have the conditions to hunt that spot. So you need to be looking for spots where you can hunt if it's hot. You need to be looking for spots you can hunt on a cold front, spots you can hunt when it's dead calm out. Are there some spots real close to the road that you could get a morning hunt in where you're not going to be super intrusive? Because what a lot of people will do is they'll force it. They'll be like, these are my only 2 days to go, and this is the spot I got to be. So they'll go in there when the conditions are bad or the timing ain't right, and the deer ain't in there yet, and all they're doing is leaving their scent in that spot, and they're blowing everything out because they don't have good conditions to get in and out of there. That benefits the flexible worker way more because they can pick and choose when they go. They have the same amount of time. So that would be my advice, biggest piece of advice for the weekend warriors. Finding efficient ways to scout the properties that you're hunting and multiple setups for multiple conditions. Because you're at the mercy of whatever the weather is doing when you can go.
That is such a good point. That's an underutilized point because, man, I've fallen victim to that so much over these last couple of years where I'm just going and trying to find the best setup, period. Like, where are the deer at? Where's the best spot? And I never really consider, what if it's hot? What if it's a south wind? And, it's kind of an afterthought, but I've never focused on that. And sure enough, Saturday rolls around or whatever, Thanksgiving holiday rolls around, and there's a warm front. Or it's like a crazy wind that I didn't anticipate, or it's raining, or whatever. And then I'm sitting in my truck on Onyx. I'm like, well, I could go here, I could go there, and I'm just hunting a random spot at that point.
Yep.
And that doesn't get talked about nearly enough, I don't think. That's a really, really good tip.
Well, and also when you're talking about efficiency, and weekend warrior, we hear a lot from weekend warriors, and we've interviewed a few that are very successful in the Southeast, who they really try to make it work as best as possible with a very tight schedule. And the number one common thing that comes up with all those guys that we've had on the podcast is timing. Mm-hmm. There's certain times when I might need, or they may need to, I'm going to say, build some brownie points with the family and the spouse. Make sure everything's taken care of at home because they know there's a certain window of time, typically going to be late pre-rut time frame, of when they need to be in the field, when they're going to take that couple-day vacation, when they can have a long weekend to go and hunt. And they typically do enough homework ahead of time and over years of history. They know where they need to be, when they need to be with the right conditions, and they go in there and they selectively harvest a great buck or just shoot their deer and then be able to get back out because, again, they have very limited time. So the efficiency and the timing becomes super critical. Is that something that even to you, even today, now family, spouse, everything going on, that timing still something that you really kind of pay attention to instead of just hunting whenever and however you can?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like I brought up the acorn example a while ago. If it's early season and you're in a bunch of fresh rubs on the tail end of the white oak acorn crop, you got to hunt that spot right now. People are worried about getting in there and blowing stuff up, but if you're hunting in big wood scenario where deer move around a good bit, they're on those white oak acorns for a very short period of time. So you've got to get at them right now. You might throw an aggressive setup at it even if it's 80 degrees because the deer's literally bedded in the woods 60 yards from you. He's going to stand up and start feeding on acorns 30 minutes before dark. And people are worried about blowing those deer out. But I'm not hunting him in that spot in 2 weeks. When he starts running scrape lines and moving closer to doe bedding towards the end of October, then I transition to scrapes on the edge of thick cover. And I have setups for those for various winds and various conditions and know how to get in and out of those spots. And then that transitions into the rut when scrapes start drying up a little bit and bucks are just going A to B. Maybe you're not looking at these pounded deer trails anymore. There's just this one spot where there's 2 or 3 rubs strung together along the downwind side of this cedar thicket. And you don't think much of them rubs. There's not much of a trail there, but one buck is going to come through there every day between 8 and 4 in the afternoon during the rut. He may be this big, he may be this big, but he's going to come through that spot. And I'd rather be sitting on that spot, on that X, and have that one deer do that at 10 yards than sit somewhere and see 15 of them at 200. So timing plays a huge role. I'm thinking about like scrape hunters, for example. Like you're talking about people that are building brownie points beforehand. If you have a lot of success hunting deer over scrapes and harvesting them over scrapes wherever you're at, and that strategy really works well to you, then build on that. Take your vacation not during the rut. Take it at the end of October when they're heavily scraping, and you've got 10 of these community scrapes found that are along the edges of these doe bedding areas. You catch that at the right time and you hunt all those spots at the right time, you're probably going to get a good opportunity. I love scrapes for that because it puts the deer on a spot when you're bow hunting. And it may not work very much, but boy, when it does, they come in, they're preoccupied. If you got the wind coming from you to them, they are in trouble because you can get drawn back. It's just, it's like they're coming to a bait pile almost. They're coming to that scrape. Now, they may come in there in some intricate ways that you need to be aware of once you blow it a few times, but that timing is a huge thing. And then it moves even, after the rut, it goes into post-rut and then late season and so on and so forth. But I'm always thinking about that. People will constantly go out there in mid-October. White oaks start falling in the end of August, early September in a lot of places where I've hunted. It may be different down south. You all have got a cascade of species. I've hunted nuttalls real late down there and had tremendous success over them. But white oaks up here, they're leaving gobs of rubs and deer poop and deer sign in those white oak stands in early September. Season in Missouri starts September 15th. Guess where everybody's at towards the end of September? They're hunting all that sign in those white oaks, and they're thinking like, wow, there's deer poop everywhere. There's rubs everywhere. There's got to be 10 bucks in here. And they sit there and they don't see a deer for a week. Well, that's because they were there last week. They've transitioned to, they're feeding on this wetland browse down here below this ridge somewhere. Or they're on the last stand of green soybeans on the shady side of that field down below when all the rest of them turn yellow. Those types of things are happening all throughout the fall. And the older I get and the more traveling around I do, the more that becomes evident. It's real important. That fresh, hot sign is almost more important than the amount of sign. Because if you think about it, after a deer in a group of deer has been browsing on white oak acorns in one spot for 2 weeks, there's going to be sign everywhere. Mm-hmm. And you're going to be like, man, this is the ticket. I'd rather find that rub that is bleeding. That's like, that sucker got made this morning.
Yeah.
He's here.
We're fighting over a question here. How do you deal with, you need to put boots on the ground and you need to scout and you need to find that hot sign, but also not being overly invasive and burning your spots up, like walking through them and bumping the deer and whatnot?
I don't worry about it. The more I do it, the less I worry about it. Unless I'm hunting a very small property, hunting a specific deer or something like that. If you're getting into that stuff, then that's a different ball game. But as far as just killing deer, which I think will ultimately aid you in killing more mature bucks as you get older, I do not mind spooking deer. I do it in a certain way though. So scout into the wind, and if you bump deer out in front of you, and scout strategically, like if you're going up it through what you believe is a bedding area or around the edge of it where you're getting into a sensitive area, I want the wind coming to me. I want those deer to hear or see me and get out of there. I do not want them to smell me. There's no guarantee that they're going to come back, but if I get up in there and I can see the whole picture, if I can see where those deer are bedded, where they ran to, where the sign was at, the feeding sign that they were leaving coming out of that bedding area, then I can recycle that and find 5 other spots that look similar to it. I can repeat that situation across the landscape. Also, if you bump a nice buck out of there and he goes in one direction, flagged up, and he's just kind of bounding away, he's going to go 300 or 400 yards away and settle down in the next bedding area. Don't push the issue then. Just say, okay, he went that way. I scouted a spot over there last March. I'm going to hunt that spot in the morning. Or I'm going to hunt that spot tomorrow afternoon. Maybe he'll stay over there. And maybe I'll find the same situation that's right here over there, or a similar one that I can execute.
So bumping deer doesn't bother you?
Not really.
Now, what about on the small property side?
Yes. Yep. Hunting here on my place, if I go walking back here right now where y'all seen that doe a while ago, and I bump the deer off the edge of that clover plot, they won't be back for a week. I can sit up here at the house and watch them all summer. As soon as I go down there to hunt and I get in that bottom where that wind swirls, whoo, I ain't figured it out yet. But hopefully in a few years I will. That's a different ball game because you're bumping them off the area where you can hunt them. So you got to be more strategic about that.
Yeah, it's kind of like the example you just gave. If you're on a big property, it could be a big hunting club or a lease or public, but if you've got options where he runs to that next area, that next bedding area, and you can go over there and you can still hunt him over there, that's a lot different than, if you've got your little section and that's all you got. And we get the question all the time about people who are like, I've got 8 acres. Like, what should I do? I'm like, don't bump deer.
Don't bump them off of that. No. But think about your timing too.
Mm-hmm.
It's like people get so hung up on like, I can't go in the woods. I can't go in the woods. I can't go in the woods. You got to learn it. And it takes years to learn it. I'm telling you, I spent thousands of hours out there and I don't know nothing. I'm picking up little bitty details at a time on these areas. It takes decades to learn a 150 acre property, let alone thousands and thousands of acres of public across the country. So timing is a big, big deal. You bump a deer out of a spot on October 1, he probably ain't going to be there anyway on October 30th. He might, but his interests are different at that time and his diet is different at that time. More than likely, like the key food source that he's using. So I don't worry about it too much. If I'm trying to get to know an area and I'm a weekend warrior and I've never been in there and October 1st rolls around, I'm going in to get the intel on October 1st so I can kill one on October 15th.
Also, another thing that I want to get into while we're talking about scouting is, and you mentioned this a couple times without going into a ton of detail on it, but when you're scouting, you're picking the tree, like you're looking at access. You're being very detailed on how you're going about doing it. You're not just walking in there, oh, there's some nice sign, drop a pin, and then walk off. Can you walk us through what's going through your mind when you're scouting and how detail-oriented you are? Where if you find a spot that you have a lot of confidence in, I don't know if you're taking notes on Onyx or, drop, like, I don't know what all you're doing, but could you maybe walk us through a little bit of that maybe could help somebody else?
If I have the time, I spend every ounce of it that I can out there. If I don't have the time, that stresses me out when I find good stuff because I have to leave with questions unanswered. I don't want questions unanswered when I leave. I want every bow tied before I walk out of that spot. Like you said, I want the tree for this wind. I want to know where that scrape is. I'm walking to that scrape, I'm looking at that tree, and I'm thinking, is this branch going to be a problem? Is this branch going to be a problem? How's he going to come in here, and where can I draw? I'm trying to think about not only from how I'm going to kill him from that tree, but what can he see as he's walking through there. So I'm actually getting on the deer trail, picking the tree, picking, a random one or whatever, and then I'm walking that deer trail, and I'm thinking like, okay, where are his eyes going to be when he's coming up this trail? Can he see me out of this thing? Where can I draw my bow? If this trail goes around this little cedar tree right here, can I draw it right here and kill him in this hole? I'm looking at those little intricacies, and then I'm taking notes on how high I need to get. Okay, there's a fork up there. There's more cover at that fork. It's 18 feet up or thereabouts. So I need to bring 4 sticks in here on this. So 4 sticks. Is it a good tree for a saddle? I'd be better with my little stand, so I'm going to bring my little stand, and then Ted can get on the back with the saddle and that other fork. So Ted's saddle, me 4 sticks, and small stand. So I'm putting that in my Onyx notes. And from there, I'm thinking about how I get in there. So I will turn the tracker tool on or whatever, and I'll go back out of there, backtracking my access, how I'm going to get in and out of there. I mean, that's just a few details. There's way, I could go down the rabbit hole, you know. There's way more than that. But how the wind behaves is such an important thing to understand. You know, thermals are, I haven't even scratched the surface of learning about thermals, but they are so important depending on the conditions that you have that particular day. There's so many spots I have where I can hunt for the first hour of the morning, but after that your goose is cooked because your wind is swirling too much. Or you have to hunt in the last hour of the day when your wind is pulling down. You may not be able to hunt them in a tree. You may literally have to hunt at the top of a ditch where you can't see nothing but the ridge cap in front of you, because the last hour of the day is when they're hooking that ridge on these scrapes, and you've got to have your scent pulling down that ditch. If you get up in a tree, it's going to swirl too much. If you're at the top of the ditch, you can feel the wind coming off the top of the ridge and pulling into the ditch. So you sacrifice your visibility for a better setup, so where they can't smell you. But I'm going through a lot of that stuff, whether it's a ground setup, whether it's a tree, whatever. And some of our setups are 4 feet off the ground. Some of our setups, the tree is so small that you have to stand on the saddle platform and face away from the tree and basically rope yourself into it and stand there for hours. It sucks, but that's where you got to be. I want to be there on that spot.
Also, when you're talking about using the tracker to be able to track yourself going back out on X, that makes me think, at what point when you're scouting, are you saying like this is the spot versus a good spot? And because we come across, everybody has dealt with that before, like, oh, this is good, but I don't know if this is the spot. What has to be in your mind? What do you have to see? And then at that point, turn around and be able to find your access route at that point.
I've been wrong about that a lot, honestly. Where I thought like, oh man, this is it right here. I've got to get in here. And then I get in there and it's like, I underperformed a little bit. You know, I had too high expectations. Then I went into spots that I didn't think were all that good and didn't see much for sign and shot a big buck. You know, you don't know as much as you think you do about what's going on. You're just getting little bitty tidbits and trying to figure out how to insert yourself into his day for a few seconds. So there's a few of them though. If I find real hot sign, man, if it's late October and I find a hot scrape along the edge of a bedding area and I know I didn't spook nothing out of that bedding area and the wind is in my favor, I need to hunt that scrape now, because he could literally be laying 70 yards from me. You know, he might not, but in the volume of sign that you see, you know, if you see a lot of really big rubs and a lot of big tracks, fresh deer poop coming in and out. I mean, it's a lot of the basic woodsmanship stuff that gets me fired up.
Yeah. But also differentiating, but making sure it's just through gut feeling experience, it's not nighttime sign.
Right. And I don't know what it is, man. It's like, I equate it to a bird dog when they're running through a field and all of a sudden that tail starts twitching a lot, and you can tell that they've caught the scent of something, and they start getting birdie, and you can tell their focus is heightened, and then they don't know where it is or you know how far away it is maybe, but they're alerted to the presence of a quail that's 40 yards away or something. That's the feeling that I'm talking about whenever the instincts start to take over when you find that sign. It's like it almost feels kind of spooky. It's like, oh boy, we slipped in here. We did not get detected. There's a huge rub up there with bark on top, and that rub is bleeding. And there's a downfall over there 40 yards away that looks like a prime spot for a buck to be laying. He could be laying there. And many, many times I have taken 4 steps and blown him out of there. So anymore, I'm like very aggressive to a point, and once you hit that wall and those instincts start going off, it's like you better think real hard about your next decision right here, because it may make or break this afternoon's hunt or the next morning's hunt.
And that comes from experience. You can't teach that. You can't teach that feeling. And that's the thing, like we talk so much about woodsmanship, but a lot of it for applied woodsmanship has to come experience. Like you're not going to read something or see something, hear something, go out there and implement it, and it works. Like you're going to blow it because there's woodsmanship and there's applied experience that makes that woodsmanship really work well, I think.
It mostly comes to, and I'm not good enough at it where I can just walk into the woods and just know he's there, you know. I mean, it comes from seeing sign.
It's not like we're walking around with a thermal like, oh, I see him, right?
Yeah, I know he is. It comes from seeing sign most of the time, but it also comes from reading the woods on the way there. It's like if you're heading into a spot and you bump a little buck and it's in the rut, you bump another little buck, you know, in close proximity to him, and then you start seeing fresh scrapes and fresh rubs that haven't been in those woods before, like up to that point that year, you got to start thinking about the timing that you're in and about that scenario. That's where gets back to specific situations. Like, okay, I got 2 satellite bucks here bedded close to the parking lot, and there's a bunch of fresh buck sign right here. Something interesting is happening back here right now because it's November 10th, and the rut is going on. Why are those 2 satellite bucks up here? And why are they? There's a fresh scrape right there with pee in it. Like one of them just made that. That's not a Halloween scrape from 2 weeks ago. That is a satellite buck making a scrape on the edge of a hot doe. And Big Daddy's got her down in that hole right there. And these 2 or 3 satellite bucks are you know, marking this on the outside. And I've seen that. I've blown it. But see, that's why I say don't be afraid to spook deer, because I wouldn't know this if I hadn't screwed it up 15 times. You know, I'd take another 20, 30 steps, and then, oh, there goes a doe, and oh, there goes a freaking hog 8-pointer. He ain't laying that sign down. Them satellite bucks are. But the satellite bucks are tipping me off to what's going on in that situation at that time of the year. And that's where that scent starts going off, you know, get that bird dog feelings like, maybe I ought to just, I'm only 400 yards from the car and there's boot tracks everywhere, but let's just throw a hunt at this because something interesting might be happening right here. Because that sign is out of place. That's not here usually. Something's going on right here.
Also, just from a overall deer hunter, but also bow hunter, how important is it for you to keep tabs, especially on areas that you hunt kind of year over year? It's not like necessarily a new spot you're going to or a new property, of keeping tabs of where you're consistently finding does for when that early rut, late pre-rut time starts happening and so on. Or do you do anything either to keep in the back of your mind, or like how do you go about kind of just remembering different spots where you're seeing doe groups and keeping tabs on them?
Oh, I'm marking all of those too.
Okay.
Yeah. And you think about when you get to the rut, it's pretty basic and simple. Let's connect the dots. It's the same thing whenever turkeys go to nest late in the season and people think they're call shy. Well, he's gobbling like crazy and he's walking away from me. It's like, no. He has 8 hens in that area that are nest A, nest B, nest C, and he's going doot, 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 doot. And he's connecting the dots to those hens where he can gobble to them. Beginning of the season, they were all roosted together, and he was breeding them every day, you know. Now they've all blown out, and they're all got their nests everywhere. Well, he can't communicate them all from this one spot. He's got to go over here and gobble, and he's got to go over here and gobble. It's a similar thing with a deer during the rut. He's got to go from doe bedding area A to doe bedding area B. There may be 1 mature doe and a fawn in this one. There may be 5 does in this one over here. I don't know exactly, but all I know is there's a doe there, and she's been there the last 3 times I've been in here. I don't know if it's the same deer, but I know it's a doe. So that spot is a place of interest. And as the year goes on, things change. Foliage comes off. Cover starts becoming less available. Deer start to go to areas that aren't pressured. That's why I really like scouting immediately at the end of gun season. If you're in a heavy pressure state, really like scouting during that time, because if you find a wad of deer during that time, that's because pressure's pushed them in there. So that might be the hole that you need to target in the middle of gun season, because that's the one spot where nobody was going. Not to say they won't be there next year, but a lot of people during gun season use a scoped rifle and want to get somewhere where they can shoot real far. I want to get somewhere that's thick and nasty and give me open sights 40 yards and shoot them at 13 steps walking through there. You know, I mean, it just depends on the situation and the timing, but you're paying attention to all that throughout the year. I mean, I've even seen some spots where bucks will consistently take does during the rut. And it ain't just an individual buck thing. There's something about that habitat and terrain feature that bucks want to push does up against the edge of this river and use it as a barricade almost. They want to push her up against the edge of this river, and they want to block the backside from other bucks getting to her. And every year there'll be one locked down in there. So when the guy's up on the ridge sitting in his funnel stand and he's griping about the lockdown, all my big ones, lost them to lockdown and lost them to acorns. No, you just got to think differently and hunt them differently. They're in a different spot. They're locked down with that doe in that bottom. Go down there and kill him. Or at least spook the crap out of him. I mean, whatever. You can't kill him sitting up there in the funnel stand if he ain't going to walk through it for a week and a half.
Of all the different places you've hunted, specifically habitat types that you've hunted, I know kind of being here and familiar with Missouri and kind of dominated by oak and hickory timber, is that what you like to go? Do you feel super confident in that kind of habitat versus anything else? Or is there another habitat type that you really fall in love with over the last, say, 10, 15 years?
There's definitely habitat types that are easier to hunt than others. I mean, the toughest stuff is down there where y'all live, in them big, thick, nasty woods where there's endless bedding areas and you can't observe deer from a distance. That is just, that's a booger. I mean, it's still doable. You got to look for their weaknesses in whatever you're in. I don't know that I prefer one or the other. I used to, but anymore I like to kind of experience a little bit of everything because I don't feel confident in answering a guy's email from Georgia saying, hey, I need help. I can't figure out how to kill a deer with a bow down here in this part of the state. What would you guys do? It's like, well, I've hunted down there, but I haven't hunted that part of the state. And I hunt mostly up in the Midwest. Like, I don't want to spew a bunch of crap to you that ain't going to work for your situation. So I guess that's where I'm going with that is I like them all because every time I go into a new and different situation, I'm learning something new. And that's what I love about deer hunting more than anything, is just learning and trying to figure them out in these different environments. Because every one of them has got its intricate details that's different from the last one and that's different from the next one. The easiest stuff I found is the glassable stuff. That's my opinion. Because you can hunt it at pretty much any time of year and you can get eyes on the deer and see visibly what they're doing. It may be difficult to get close to them in the spots that they're in, but you guys know how long it takes to figure out some of that big wood stuff down there. I mean, you can't see them. So, and if you don't use trail cameras, you're just basing a lot of your information on sign and just past hunts, which may take a long, long time to figure out. But if you can see everything, you can put those pieces together much quicker.
Yeah, and I like that, and I like your approach because it's almost more of a mindset or a framework of how you like to approach things. Where you're looking at the conditions and each situation that's different. And even though you like haven't hunted like South Alabama or something, for instance, I don't know, maybe you have, but as an example, I feel like you could still take that framework down there and it'll still work. You know, like you need to look at this, you need to look at that, and then adjust to whatever you're given. Basically.
Woodsmanship fundamentals or setup fundamentals will work across the board. But yeah, that's the thing where I want to be able to help people and give them something of value that they can take back wherever they're hunting. And I'm just pretty honest with folks when they ask me about that. It's like, I have no idea how to kill a coastal Mississippi or coastal Alabama buck. And to be honest, the guy that's got 5,000 acres from you 4 counties away to the north probably don't either. It's a totally different dynamic and different situation. The best way you can learn is by taking those fundamentals, like you said, and going in there and applying them and learning. Just have realistic expectations and be prepared to fail because it's going to happen a lot with bow hunting.
Yeah.
Not much you can do there.
That's one thing I really appreciate about the hunting public, y'all's channel, and what y'all do, is I feel like y'all do a really good job of showcasing that woodsmanship aspect. And someone can watch your channel and they can learn about sign reading. They can learn about the scouting aspect, and they can learn about, all the other stuff that we talked about. Like I remember years ago watching an episode where it was real windy, and I think it was Zach on there, and he was like, "Oh, it's windy. That means we can, sneak in real close." And I was like, "Oh, interesting." Normally when it's windy, I'm like, "Crap, it's windy.
Yeah.
What do I do?" So I think you guys do a really good job of showcasing that. Is that something that y'all are really intentional about? Like y'all are just trying to teach that side of it?
Oh yeah, certainly. And that's the advantage that we have, is that we're able to go and travel around and see these different environments and these different situations. So we try to showcase the individual intricate details of those. Like I mentioned the Nuttall acorns a while ago. We don't have those up here. We don't have oak trees dropping acorns in January up here like that. Not to the same extent. It's a completely different dynamic and situation down there. The rut's way later. It's more of a trickle rut that is not like the one that we have up here. All of that is real interesting to me. Just learning how these deer move and react in those environments. That Georgia buck, it was in the post-rut time frame there, and we saw zero rutting activity for a week. Nothing. And that's common down there, where you'll hunt during the rut and you will not see it. I mean, a lot of the time. And then, boom, that buck and two other ones on a hot doe, we were thrust right into a lockdown situation, which we hadn't seen all week. We were hunting bed to food patterns and spot and stalk and doing some blind calling. We were throwing the kitchen sink at them, just trying to find something that worked with a bucket full of tactics. And eventually that one did work. It got really, really lucky, but it worked. That's not to throw shade, though, at people that rely and get really good at one tactic. Y'all were talking about Bobby Worthington a while ago, which is one of my all-time favorite podcasts. I mean, that is incredible as far as hunting like rut funnels and stuff. Incredible information. But and I hunt like that frequently, but not always. It just depends on where we're at and what's going on, how much time I have.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, like you said, you kind of got to figure it out for yourself and develop your own style.
Yeah.
And that's what Bobby did.
Yeah, and like Zach, you brought up Zach a minute ago. He hates tree stands. Hates it. I mean, for years I drug him around out there and we were hunting out of trees. And he just is like, he wants to be out there walking around, looking around. So eventually he developed a style on the ground that works for him. But that's a very good point that you just made, is don't listen to me and think, well, I got to be like Aaron and try to be this adaptive hunter. That may or may not work for you and your personality. That's why I like listening to all these different guests, like you mentioned, Bobby Worthington. Y'all had that gentleman on from down south that hunts on the ground primarily with recurve.
Travis Murray.
Yeah, and he just murks them down there. I mean, that was awesome. But that's what he's honed that craft for years and years and years, and that style of hunting, and has gotten really good at it. Same with Warren. Same with Dan Infall hunting buck beds. There's little bits and pieces you can take away from everybody in that, and be self-aware with what your personality is and what your situation is and what works best for you. Is ultimately what's going to lead to more success down the road. There's a lot of people that get, so stuck in their ways once they get really good at something that they think this is the only way to skin the cat. This is how you have to do it. This is the way you've got to hunt. These guys don't pay attention to scent control. They're sloppy hunters. That's, I mean, you could, I think you could go too far, is what I'm trying to get at. It's like, yeah, you got really good at doing it one way, but there's a lot of other ways that you could do it as well. And you got to recognize you got to recognize that people are different, each and every one of us. We were talking about the shot stuff earlier with like pro archers, talking about like squeezing through it, back tension releases, proper form, all that. That may work great for some people that fight target panic and all that. I want that thing at 12 yards, and I want to put the pin on him and punch the trigger and kill him. That's how I do it. And that's how it's worked for me for years and years and years. I don't have time to sit there and settle that thing and squeeze my back muscles together and let it back tension and all that. But I'm not saying that's wrong. There's people that fight target panic every day that information is helping. So that's just an example of what I'm trying to get at. Your personality is different. You need to be self-aware of what that is and how you can take this information and apply it to your situation.
Yeah, that's something that's been actually kind of difficult for Jacob and I over the years. It's like we interview so many people who say the complete opposite thing from each other.
And like waterfall.
Yeah. Like, what do I do?
It's so true.
We were talking about it yesterday. Like one guy will be like, "Do not hunt rub lines. You're not going to see a buck that don't work." The literally next guy will be like, "You need to hunt rub lines."
Yep.
Yeah.
But they both kill deer.
Yeah.
And they just got good at what they're good at. They developed their own style.
And that's the thing you got to be careful with whitetails is there's so many different ways to be successful killing whitetail deer. So many different ways. And there's really not a wrong way as long as it's legal to kill whitetails. It's just you've got to figure out, like you said, based off your personality, your time, experience level, what could work for you and try to implement a little bit of that. But also what we hear from listeners all the time, and I don't know, you might hear from fans as well about this. They try to they connect so much to this one person because of the way they hunt, like the way this guest hunts deer, that they try it and they try it for a whole season. And it's like, it's not for them. They're like, I really liked what he said, but I can't really apply what he's doing based off where I'm hunting and experience level and so on. And you got to be careful with that as well and kind of piece together what works for you. And then again, get out in the field and experience it and fail and learn from the failures. Ask why. Why did it work? Why did it not work? And then try to learn from that situation to hopefully make yourself better the next opportunity that you get.
100%. And one thing, this may ruffle some feathers of some experts out there, but one thing I hear over and over again from quote unquote experts or people that have a ton of experience, have got a wall full of big bucks or whatever, if you listen to them long enough, they're either going to admit their weakness or they're going to show it somehow. Because if you fall into that, like that method that works so well, and you go through time and you get older and older, accumulating this wisdom on how to do that this way, you start to get tunnel vision a little bit, and you start to think like, this is the way it has to be done. This is the way I do it, and I've got a wall of big bucks, and I know everything there is to know about this. Well, then all of a sudden, you start to have weaknesses that you're not aware of because your ego has clouded your judgment. I see that happen a lot in all walks of life, business, hunting, everything. I'm not going to go and pick on these guys individually, but I think that's an important thing. Know what your strengths and weaknesses are and work on your weaknesses. Play to your strengths when you can, but this is a learning process that it's something you're never, ever going to master. You're never going to. So you might as well be humble about it and think about how you can improve all the time. I mean, you're going to have success if you go into it with that mindset, I feel like. I mean, I'm good at getting in good setups on deer. I am not as good at long-range archery shooting. Like, I need to work on that more, and maybe that will help me become a better shot. I'm good at killing them at certain distances and doing it consistently, but I'm not real good. Like, I don't have the confidence at 30 yards to kill them, as y'all can probably tell by me talking about, taking those shots. I don't have that. And I overthink things. So I'll get in a spot, like you were talking about looking at your Onyx, like, do I go here? Do I go here? Or the wind's coming out of here? And the guys that make fun of me all the time for that, because I'll sit there in the truck, paralysis by analysis, for an hour straight and not know what I'm going to do. Whereas Ted just goes off instinct. He's like, fresh rub over here. Let's go here. Done. Doesn't think about it anymore. But if you put the two of us together, we work pretty good because I'm thinking about things that he's not, but he's also not letting me overthink it. He's like, instincts are taking us here. Let's do that. Got good information from you. Instincts taking us here. We'll combine the two and make a good decision. Mm-hmm. So that's something I fight all the time, though, is a mental aspect.
And I'm glad you admitted, you have that analysis by paralysis aspect.
Yeah.
or paralysis by analysis, however you want to say it. But
can't
because that's something me and Andrew both
worry
relate with. It's like, I remember times, I mean, it's still like this day, you get to a tree and like you have confidence up and then you get there and all of a sudden you're like, well, crap, maybe I need to get in that tree. I've hunted this tree. This tree is good, but it's like, maybe I need to move here because of what happened. And then you sit there and there's 30 minutes goes by and you're just analyzing trees. And then you walk up to the tree, you're like, no, this ain't the right tree. Pack the sticks back up, walk over to the next tree. Anyways, I think that's relatable to a lot of people who's they're trying to learn and they're trying to like, maybe they get too much in their head and, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. But I'm glad you admitted that.
The opposite side of that is true too. Mm-hmm. You may be failing a lot because of things you didn't think about. So try to improve that aspect of your game a little bit. Mm-hmm. It just depends on who you are.
Yeah. Aaron, one thing I wanted to ask you about, kind of getting to a point of wrapping up here, is y'all have a big, giant YouTube channel, and y'all go all over the place hunting, and y'all have caught flack for, spot burning or whatever people call it, and you see it on social media from time to time. I'm just curious, what's your thoughts on it? Where y'all at with that?
It bothers me to some degree. I won't lie. I mean, that kind of comes to the territory whenever you post stuff on the internet and on social media. I am all for constructive criticism. And the spot burning thing is something that we've heard some. But a few times I've heard it was from some guy on a forum that was posting pictures of the spot and like the signs of the WMAs. Like, these guys spot burn this place right here. And he showed a picture of the sign. It's like, dude, we've never filmed that sign one time for a reason. So, yeah, I mean, more people might be going to public land because they're interested in it, but you got to think about the whole pie here. The reason why we go to public land is not to be cool. It was because that was what our options were. I mean, I was talking about growing up a while ago. I had private land in that spot where Old Faithful deer stand was at. That's gone now. We lost that. We lost many other private land spots growing up. For a variety of reasons, hunting leases, recreational land, going up in value, access becoming an issue. And I thought it was just in my little pocket of Missouri where that was happening until I started traveling around the country and I realized that's happening darn near everywhere. Access is a problem and people go where they can go, which is public land. That's why we ended up going to hunt public land in the first place. So I don't think the gripes are going to get any better, whether we're filming out there or not. Y'all, people got to have a place to go hunting, and I want them to have a place to go hunting. And that's what hopefully, when I leave this earth, they have plenty of places to do it. And that was the problem that we saw happening was there was no content out there representing a regular guy that was facing the same struggles that we were. It was all, it was all big tracts of private land or outfitters and highly manipulated and managed situations that take millions of dollars to do in many cases. And that just didn't relate to me at all. And I knew there was lots and lots of other people in the same boat. And how did I get involved in all this? I watched hunting videos and I read magazines. That fired me up to go in the yard and shoot my bow and get ready to go. There's a lot of people out there like that. So we recognize we got a responsibility and we do our best, and we're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes. And occasionally over the years, we have accidentally, mentioned a county in a video or something like that. But that was not on purpose, trust me. We go through these things, and if it was missed, it was because it was a mistake. And there was emails and text messages and phone calls that happened after the fact that was like, guys, we cannot do this. We cannot let the name of a specific area slip that we're hunting on because there's local folks that hunt that area. If you go online and you do your research and you decide that it's an area that you want to travel to and hunt on your own, more power to you. But if you're on there trying to figure out exactly where we're at, we don't try to divulge that information. I get asked that all the time. It's like, where'd you kill this buck? Or, I get asked from people like, how far from your house do you hunt? Where do you live? And all this stuff is like, no, guys.
Man.
Hunt all over the place. and we don't get into that. But here's the thing: what we were talking about before the podcast. Some of that criticism is honest and good criticism that we need to hear. When we started, we got a few hundred views on a video. Now one may get 200,000. Like, that's more and more responsibility on us. We can't make mistakes, big ones in that regard, because it could potentially put way too much pressure on the resource in a small area. And trust me, we know. We lose sleep over it. Like, we are very, very careful about what we share and where we share it. So, like you mentioned the state thing. That was one of the criticisms we got a few years ago. It's like, I wish you guys would quit naming states. And sometimes we don't name them. If it's an area that I feel like is identifiable, we won't talk about a state. And people we'll get hate from the other side then. It's like, why don't you guys name the state? It's not interesting if you guys don't tell us at least which state you're at. It's not like you're naming the specific area. So there's no pleasing everybody. If we don't name the state, we're going to make them mad. If we do name the state, we're going to make the people that hate us, mad. But we try to do our best and use discretion as much as we can there, and still provide people with enough information to tell the story of what we're doing. We feel like the pros vastly outweigh the cons. Some people won't agree with that. Some people will say we've ruined public land, and to them, they hate our guts anyway. I've never met them. If you don't want to at least give me the time of day to meet me and know what the heck I'm about, then there ain't much I can do for you. All I can tell you is we keep going out there, a bunch of average Joes, and we're having success. And we ain't nothing special. We're just regular guys that love to hunt. And we still finding plenty of deer and turkeys out there. You just got to be willing to work for it and not make up a bunch of excuses as to why you're not having success out there. I've seen young people with tremendous positive attitudes go out there with very little knowledge about what they're doing and have success. And I've seen older guys that just, are grumpy and think the sky is falling and there's no deer left and there's no turkeys. And if you have that attitude about you, there ain't much I can do for you. Because you're going to struggle with that. If you walk into the woods and you see a guy, another hunter, 300 yards in, and you're like, throw your bow down and stomp out of there ain't much I can do for you. It's public land. And it was public way before we started doing this, and there was people out there. So,
one thing I wanted to bring, because it's an interesting conversation, and it's not even, I don't think it's like a spot burning comment, because we don't get that. Well, I guess we have got that in the past. But it's more so about people complaining about overcrowding because they want it exclusively for, I guess, them. And we've had some interesting conversations on the podcast about this with one of our good buddies, Michael Perry. He's been on the podcast a bunch in the past and killed some gigantic deer in Alabama. And he's been hunting for a long enough time in the state where, and specifically in Alabama, not every state's like this, but we've lost a lot of public. A lot of our public in Alabama is lease land. It's not state owned, but it's state managed. And he grew up hunting, in like the late 70s, 80s, when we had a lot more land than we have currently. And he's big about promoting public land and even some specific public land tracts for the aspect of our state agency specifically keeps track of how many people based off who's signing in are actually using the property, which could indicate how much funding they get for specific properties and, again, overall public use case. And there's a conversation we had there about overcrowding versus making sure that it's being used for public land activities, hunting being one of them, so that those public lands stay there, especially if it's not just federal ground, state managed ground. Again, but we've had a lot of comments about in the past, like, man, you are Southern outdoorsmen in our area of the country is causing a increase of overcrowding in some of the public. And we don't have as much public in Alabama as like some of these other states like Missouri, but still have some pretty big tracts. And outside of turkey season, first week of turkey season, 2 weeks of turkey season is crazy. It gets a little hectic, but outside of that, it's not too terrible. It's just one of those things that if you're not going to use it and have people that are advocating for it, there is a chance you could lose some of that.
Oh, yeah, we about did last week or 2 weeks ago, whatever. I mean, that's where social media was a positive because we were able to rally a lot of people around that and not lose some public land. If we don't have those voices, like you said, if you don't have the interest, why keep it? There's no reason for them to keep it, especially when they have a terrible, huge deficit that they're trying to get rid of. Most agencies do, and obviously the federal government does. Why keep it if nobody's using it? I mean, that could be a major problem. On the flip side, though, I totally understand the overcrowding thing, because you can't overcrowd it and then completely destroy the resource. You have to balance the two things together. You have to have a resource there, and ultimately everybody wants to have a quality experience out there. So I do get that to a certain degree. I just think that from one person to the next, a quality experience may be different. One of the guys that hates our guts, says all this stuff that's not true. I mean, they posted something not long ago that was like, these guys for a fact plant cellular cameras all over the country and pay guys in different states thousands of dollars to monitor cameras until they get a big buck on them. And then these guys from the hunting public travel there and shoot them. And I was like, they put this out and said they had a source and it was fact. And I usually don't engage. I just they hate our guts. There's not much I can do about it. But I just put on there, I was like, this is false, period. Like, I have 3 trail cameras in there right now, and probably 2 of them are going to sit there all year. I mean, that was completely false. And you see that happen sometimes. When somebody's making stuff up about you, they really don't like you for whatever reason.
Yeah.
They're going to suit their narrative, whatever it is. But there was a fellow that same, one of them same guys that really didn't like us was saying that we were ruining the public land turkey hunting in all these places because we were killing too many turkeys. And I looked, and that guy's killing 15, 16 birds a year for the last several years. It's like, last time I checked, most states we go to, we buy a license, most of us do, and we go out there and we kill a turkey or 2, and then we leave. How many did you kill? So I get it to a certain degree, but I guess my point I'm making there is that one person's expectations are different from somebody else's. You may have a new hunter that's 18 years old that's just getting into bow hunting, and maybe he was inspired by a video on YouTube and he wants to go out there and shoot a spike. He's going to make some mistakes. He's new at this. You got a guy over there on the next ridge that's been hunting that public land for 20 years, and he's trying to kill that 150-inch buck that he's been hunting in there for 3 years. That's the only deer that big on that whole property. And here comes this 18-year-old down through the woods with his saddle on, trying to shoot a spike, and he ruins that guy's hunt. That guy goes home and he goes to the forum, and then he spews information out there about somebody like us. The reality is that you got 2 different people there using public land with 2 different goals in mind. And you're going to have to be okay with both of them because it's public. You're going to have to be okay with both of them. The only place where I tend to lean towards one side or the other is when it comes to kids. If you're talking about getting kids in the woods, take a bird out of my bag, or take a tag from me, or take time from me, let them have it. I'm fine with that, so long as that results in them becoming hunters. If there's a lot of states out there that have high youth hunter recruitment, not high youth hunter retention, and that's a problem. So we need these kids to hunt and then enjoy it and be able to pass it down. But in order to do that, they've got to get hooked on it like we are at some point. They have to have opportunity to do that, and that's the reason we started to hunt in public, is because that opportunity to do that was drying up. Access is becoming more and more challenging. And there are so many young families that come up to us at these shows that are like, hey, thank you. My son is not watching Fortnite videos on YouTube. He's watching you guys, and he wants to go to the woods. And I'll be honest with you, if there's a guy that's going out and killing 15 turkeys a year and griping at us versus that young family that's over there that's trying to get their kids outside and keep them out of the video games, I'm going to side on the young family than I am with the guy that's killed 300 longbeards. We got to share a little bit here.
And that's one thing I really appreciate about what y'all do is, like you were saying, when you guys came along, most of the hunting shows that were out there were entirely unrelatable. There were big properties, You know, good for them. I'm not like saying that these people who are on these TV shows or whatever, like, you know, good for them. Like they made their money and they had this thing that they like to do. That's great. But it got like so serious to a point. And you guys came along and y'all were average guys hunting public ground. But the main thing was y'all were just having fun. You're like a group of guys and you're out there just literally having fun. And I remember like right when y'all first started, I think it was Zach shot a buck in Nebraska. It was like 125, 130 inch buck in Nebraska. And I remember talking to someone about it. And they were like, it's just cool to see a bunch of guys from Iowa get that fired up over a deer that size. You know, and it's like, y'all made it fun again. A lot of the content out there, just some of them were entertaining, a lot of them weren't, and most of them weren't relatable. But you guys kind of flipped the paradigm on that. So, and I think that's important. I mean, not only from the access standpoint, but just from hunting in general. Like, show people, like, man, this is fun. Like, you can go out there and you don't have to be that serious about it. You don't have to go shoot a big giant buck all the time. You can just go out there with some friends, have fun, and if they care about it, they'll protect it.
That's right. Social aspect of hunting is a big deal, and that's been lost in our generation. You know, deer camp tradition used to be really big deal around here in the 90s. And then check stations started drying up. You know, technology took over more and more, and people started kind of doing their own thing and wanting to shoot bigger and older and bigger and older and bigger and older. And then what you wind up with in order to get bigger and older is fewer people hunting deer. That's just what I've seen happen in my lifetime, and I don't want to lose that. I mean, I have so many great memories growing up of deer camp, and just not seeing a deer and just can't wait to get to deer camp, see if one of the other guys has got a doe hanging up there or something, and we can go get the story. So that's been a big part of what we do, and why we always have that in the content. And that's one of the funnest things we get to do is hunt these areas with our friends, and which are a lot of the guys that you see on the show. It's like we go in there, if somebody has success, we're just as happy filming it or going in and helping them drag it out as they are shooting the thing. And I remember when deer hunting was like that.
Yeah,
and that was pretty cool.
The last thing I was going to say on it, and I meant to bring this up earlier, but one thing that I think is maybe underappreciated about you guys and what you do is going back to how hunting content used to be. The content was built around the sponsors, and the content was built around whatever product was making them successful, whether it be food plot seed or bait or whatever. And no one promoted woodsmanship like what we've been talking about. You can't bottle up woodsmanship and sell it. Like, you just can't. But you guys promote it so heavily. And that was just such a deviation from what was the normal. And I think it was really needed, especially at that time. And it's a lot more common now. I mean, we try to do it, and there's a lot of other people out there making content who try to promote that woodsmanship now. And I'm glad that you guys came along and did that, because those are things that can be lost. I mean, those are perishable skills where if they're not passed down, and like you're talking about with the deer camp drying up, same thing in Alabama. I mean, the check stations, you used to go to the check station to get you a gun permit on a gun day on a WMA, and there'd be 200 people in line at 4 a.m. and you like knew all those guys. And then you get your permit and you go, throw gravel out of the parking lot trying to get to your spot. And that was like a thing, and that just doesn't happen anymore.
Yep.
And a lot of those people that you knew back then, whether they were your relatives or just your buddies or just people that you ran into on the WMA, that's where a lot of that woodsmanship got passed down. And I felt like it was kind of going away. And I feel like people like you are doing something important when it comes to that.
We're trying to. We definitely started the business not focusing on sponsors. I mean, we started the business with basically nothing and just making hunting videos. That's what we said when we set out to do this. We're like, we're going to make hunting videos that mean something to people, that are relatable to people, that build value for them. And if we get sponsors at some point, great, but they're not going to be the priority. It's going to be the viewers that are the priority. The people that are out there just like us. That's what we want to make these videos for, and that's what we continue to try to do. And luckily, we've been able to find a way to make a living doing this, but for a long time, nothing happened there. Like, we had to work other jobs and do contract work outside of this that runs through our production company, which most people aren't even aware of that we have. But our skills are in making videos. Like we can film weddings, we can edit those, we can do property, stuff for you. We used to do a lot more of that, just so that we didn't have to have a bunch of sponsors, because I didn't want people to have to watch through a bunch of advertisements. Also, anytime we do have a sponsor, we're very, very strict about telling them right out of the gate, like, look, if it comes down to us having to make a piece of content for you that takes away from making something for the viewer, we are going to pick the viewer every single time. Like, we cannot make infomercials and advertisements for you and sacrifice the content for the viewer. Like, if it's educational, if it's something that they're asking for and that they need information on, we will certainly do it. But the viewers are number one.
One thing I just want to touch on, I want to get your thoughts on this, talking about the public land and like we were talking about the overcrowding and all that kind of stuff just a few minutes ago. Can you give us your rundown of how you approach public land hunting ethics when it comes to other guys hunting a place and all that kind of stuff? Like, how do y'all typically handle that? And maybe, I don't know if you have any stories about bad public land ethics from other people and how things you all have dealt with in the woods, but like, how would you want to promote that to people that aren't used to hunting public land and hunting property that is going to have other people on it no matter what happens, of how to handle those situations out there?
I would just be courteous to other people. Hardly any of us are starving. It ain't like hunting 300 years ago. We got grocery stores that, I know the economy ain't doing as good as it once was. We got a bad deficit and all that, but for the most part, we ain't starving. We're going out there, and yes, I do eat a lot of deer myself, but if you see other people out there, expect to see other people and be courteous to other people. I used to think about this completely different. When I was younger, I was all about scoring bucks and like trying to hide my spots, not saying anything to anybody out there. And then when I'd run into somebody, I'd be pissed off. I'd go home mad, thinking they ruined my hunt. And I just hit a certain point one day when I said to hell with all that. And I was hunting a specific buck on my dad's farm. I'd been hunting him for 2 weeks. I rattled him in. He come right underneath me. I thought it was a different deer, and I let him walk off. He got out about 50 yards, and I got to look through my binoculars. I was like, son of a gun, that's the deer I've been hunting for 2 weeks. And I just let him walk away because I was measuring his G3s. And I'd been messed up by my neighbor a couple times, so I was mad at him. I got down out of the tree. I went home, got ready, went into work, and I was like, this ain't why I started deer hunting. This ain't how I got into it. This is not the deer hunter I want to be anymore. So I left that deer hunter in those woods that day. And I was like, I am not going to the woods with that mindset no more. So that's how I look at it when I go to public now. When I go out there and I see other people, I try to talk to them. I try to be kind and courteous. And I want to find out where they're going, not so that I can get in there on their spot, so that I can avoid it, so that they can have a good experience. And ultimately, that's helped me. I thought, I'm going to do this to try to be nice, but it ended up working out the other way too. It's like it's actually helped me be more efficient, more effective out there, because by talking to people at the parking lot and being kind and courteous, asking them where they go, then now where they're going to be. They know now where you're going to be. So you can go in there and you don't have to worry about going 3 miles in to find a trail camera as often, or run into a guy that's already set up before you. And you got to realize, man, we're deer hunting. We don't know a lot of the stuff that's going on. You may be dead set on this tree in this spot today, but you cannot tell me that you're going to go out there and guarantee that you're about to kill a buck. Adapt and overcome. I had a gentleman from Michigan walk in on me a few years ago. I got there real early in a spot, went in the dark, had this spot, was dead set on going there. And he come in there. He didn't see me out in front of him, and eventually I stopped because I could tell he was going in the same thicket I was. So I turned around and I talked to him a little bit. He's like, I'm from Michigan. I've been waiting to come down here and hunt for 3 years. He said, I got a stand back there, and I'm going to go hunt it. And he did not care where I was going. He was going to sit in that tree. And he was talking about the edge of that thicket, and I was like, that's right where I was about to climb up in my saddle and go. And he seemed pretty adamant, and I got to thinking about it. I was like, you know what? I got 6, 7 other spots around here close that I could get to pretty easy. He's been waiting for 3 years to hunt here, and he obviously drug a stand all the way in here to hunt it. I got a saddle on. I was like, go ahead. So I just left him to it. I ended up killing a buck that day. I got to Plan D, and it ended up being great. We had one of the best gun hunts I've ever had. And who knows what he did. He might not have even seen a deer. Hard to say. But I guess that's what I'm getting at, is be kind and courteous to other people. If somebody beats you to a spot, practice first come, first serve. But even then, you're going to run into situations where you got somebody that's just adamant. That's like, this is my spot. This is where I'm going. And I don't even fight it. I'm like, man, a deer, I love hunting them, but I'm not starving. I don't have to kill one today. I can go somewhere else and learn something new about a different spot, or I can go to Plan B or C that I was interested in. It's all about the attitude you have going into it. And, is it a positive attitude or a negative attitude? Are you waiting for something to go wrong, or are you adaptive and ready to, just kind of take things as they come? And I feel like everybody has some control over that. If you go into it with that mindset, I think you'll be a lot better off, and so will your peers out there on public land.
I've got to ask, have you ever had you've been up in a tree and a guy climbed 19 yards from you while you were up in the tree?
I've had them walk by real close. I've had them set upright close to me. I haven't had one climb up right next to me. I accidentally climbed up right next to a dude one time, though.
So you were that guy.
I was that guy, 100%.
He didn't whistle or nothing?
Nothing. Didn't say a thing. Middle of the day, there was no car out on the road. No other way to get in there. Must have got dropped off. I went in there. I did not see him. He did not whistle. I climbed up in the tree, and I had been sitting there for 2 hours. And I looked over there, and there he was, sitting there in that tree. And I was like, Eric was with me, my old buddy Eric Barber, who works up at Vortex now. He's with me. He's like, do you have any idea that guy was there? I was like, no, I didn't. We ended up almost killing a buck that night, and he shot a deer. I don't know what it was, but I heard him shoot, and I heard it run off. And then he was over there, like with his flashlight, following blood after dark. But yeah, I didn't have any idea he was there. And I didn't move because I didn't know if he even knew I was there. I mean, he never even looked over there. He was dead set on sitting there. Our wind was going over a creek both ways. So I was like, well, we're already in here. We might as well sit here. It was far enough away that I felt safe with a bow. But yeah, I've had that. I've had similar things happen. What are y'all grinning about? Have you had that happen?
Oh, I got a story. I'll tell you afterwards. It was bad. It was real bad.
Yeah.
It's a great story.
There's a lot of people. You have to deal with the public on public land. Yeah. So dealing with the public, you're going to have some bad apples and some really good ones. But
It's part of the strip.
I seriously, I've had way more positive encounters with people than negative ones.
Oh, yeah.
Same.
And I don't know about you, some of my close friends that I have now, I met because I ran into them on public land accidentally. Mm-hmm. They're coming in, I'm coming out, or kind of working the same spot. You talk to them, and ended up 6 years later, y'all are buddies.
Yep.
So you never. I've said this before on podcasts. Don't look at it as a negative when you run into somebody in public, because you never know. First off, just talking to them, you kind of get, especially if you get the chance to talk to them, you might get a feel like this dude's actually pretty serious about it. And you can start swapping information, become buddies, and then you're hunting together later on, and y'all are both working together, trying to kill some deer or turkeys. So don't always look at it as like a negative, like, oh, they ruined my hunt. You never know who you might come across that might be actually beneficial for you a year in the future or something like that, and become a buddy of yours.
Oh, yeah, and you're always reading people sign when you're out there. Mm-hmm. You're trying to figure out where you can go where there's nobody at. And if you meet these people and they tell you what they're doing and what their plan is, well, then that aids you in your process of figuring it out. Not trying. So many people get obsessed with a spot and they're like, this is the X and this is where you have to be and all this. And it's more of a big deal in turkey season. I will say that. When you pull into a spot and there's one turkey gobbling back there and there's 6 different guys down this road and there's one turkey gobbling, well, where do you think everybody is going? Mm-hmm. I'm not going to be the 7th one going in there. I'm not going to be the 2nd one going in there. If there's somebody there and there's a turkey gobbling in this general direction, well, that's probably where they're at.
By the way, I was going to mention this because you're talking about a spot you get kind of fixated on. Back when y'all were with Midwest Whitetail, or you and Greg, and I think Zach was working with y'all,
Yep.
right, too? Okay. The buck nests. Those were some of the first videos I saw of you guys hunting. And like just the encounters after encounters. And I guess, I don't know if it's probably the spot y'all kind of left after a while. But I remember watching some of those videos and just like the encounters back in that one area, just fascinating.
Yeah.
So it's like, you never know, find a spot like that. And then like anything on public, guys move in, you got to move to something else, whatever, and so on. But
We filmed several hunters out of that spot that were walking right by it. Had never even thought to hunt in there. They were walking the timber line by it, and they were going into this deeper river bottom trying to get 2 miles deep. And they didn't even think about that little CRP thicket right there. But that brings up a good point. The buck nest, there was a bunch of big deer that we filmed right there. And when I was hunting in Midwest Whitetail, I was more focused on trying to kill like the biggest and the one and only. And we don't do that much with the hunting public. Basically, we don't like doing that. We like just having fun and going out there and deer hunting more than anything. But also because once a deer gets to a certain size on public land and you start hunting him, you notice that people come out of the woodwork to figure out what you're doing. In Iowa, if that number gets above 180, 190, and you're on public land, you might have the woods to yourself until somebody figures out there's a deer that big in there. And then everybody is in there. Guys that hunt private land for the last 15 years are in there. That's what trophy hunting is. That's what trophy hunting can do to public land. You know, if you're going out there and you're in Iowa and you're harvesting just a nice deer and you're trying to get in good setups and make good shots at them and have a good time with your buddies, people that are focused on trophy hunting don't think much about it. But when a deer gets to be a certain size, there's deer that we have filmed hunting in different states that we will never show. Because we know that people will move heaven and earth to figure out where that deer is. And we didn't kill them, you know, but people go off the deep end when they get real big.
antlers make a grown man crazy.
Oh, yeah. No doubt.
Awesome. Well, Andrew, you have anything else?
No, that's all I got, man.
Yeah. Well, Aaron, we appreciate the time. We spent a ton of time here talking with you, but appreciate everything that you're doing in the space. And not only is a good, really, you guys are being great role models for the up and coming generation that are really watching, and also guys kind of getting started. But also appreciate you being willing to share a lot of information, not only in some of the videos and how y'all hunt, but even here today and sitting down, taking the time to talk to us. We really appreciate it.
Man, no problem. Y'all are killing it. I listen to a bunch of them, watch it. I'm a huge fan. I told you that not too long ago, but I do. I really like what y'all are doing.
Yeah, I had to double check and see if that was actually you that texted me. I was like, there ain't no way that's Aaron texting me.
Oh, yeah, I talked to Catman.
Okay. That's what I was thinking, Jonathan.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Yeah, appreciate y'all. And thanks, everybody, for listening to my ramblings for the last little bit here. I enjoyed it.
No problem. Well, thank y'all for watching. Thank y'all for listening. We'll catch y'all back here on the next episode from the Southern Outdoorsman. And remember, guys, y'all stay Southern.